Hey guys, how are you all? Welcome back to my channel. Today we will see what if Kami obsessed with Naruto. If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments. Naruto sat on the ground beside his body and tried to keep the tears from flowing. He had tried so hard to bring Sasuke back for Sakura and yet nothing ever went right. Now here he was, dead or close to it, face down in the mud from a Chidori to the heart. He hadn't been fast enough to dodge this time. He looked across the field to find Sakura helping along a limping Kakashi. His only regret was that he couldn't bring that idiot back for her. No, that wasn't true. He had other regrets. Never seeing his friends' faces again, never eating ramen again, never training to exhaustion again, never seeing Ba-chan again. There was so much regret and nothing could be done. He watched as they picked up his body with no words exchanged between them. Guess in the end I wasn't even worth a few final words. Wonder when the Shinigami will get here. A bright light seemed to engulf the field they were in and Naruto looked to see if Sakura and Kakashi had noticed it. They just kept walking, away from him and out of his life. He closed his eyes one last time and let the tears fall freely. His last hurrah had been a big bang at least. If he ever did anything right he took the fox with him. His lips barely turned up at the corner of his mouth and he opened his eyes to find pure white everywhere. No matter which way he turned it was white except for a fox-shaped mark of black underneath him. Everywhere he walked the mark stayed with him, right underneath him. Interesting isn't it? He whipped around to find the source of the voice and saw a girl his age standing behind him. She didn't look older than 17 and yet, she had a wizened look to her, like she had seen it all and done it all. An aura of calm exuded from her and Naruto felt at peace. If death included pretty girls like this one, he was okay with dying. He cocked his head and stared at the beauty in front of him, studying her. Her hair was black and hung in curls down to her mid-back. Her skin was pale and yet seemed luminescent and warm. The smile that graced her face was almost motherly in a sense and Naruto felt safe when he looked at her. Surely this girl meant him no harm. Who are you? Where is this place? Why am I here? Am I dead? One question at a time, young one. Now what do you want answered first? Young one? I'm sorry miss, but you look as old as me. The girl laughed at this and it was melodious, the laughter seeming to hang and tinkle in the air. It was enjoyable. You flatter me, young man. My age cannot be measured in numbers. I guess you could say my age is infinity. Are you an angel? Better. You mortals know me as Kami. Naruto's eyes widened and the look that crossed his face caused Kami to look at him with distress. The orange-clad ninja immediately fell to his knees and hung his head. Perplexed, Kami asked him what he was doing. Forgive me Kami-sama, I meant no disrespect. I am sorry, please forgive me. I am not worthy to be in the presence of one such as you with all the blights on my soul. Please pass judgment on me and let me be on my way to wherever you deem fit in hell. Kami frowned at this. Was this what mortals did to each other in their spare time? Tear each other down until they questioned their own self-worth and were willing to damn themselves for sins they never committed? Why do you say those things, Naruto? Surely you don't believe that? The spots on my soul are from the fox. I know this. It's been explained to me several times that I am bound to the fox and he to me. Our souls are bound together and therefore his sins are my sins. Nothing I could do would make up for his sins and therefore I deserve to be punished. Please Kami-sama, I deserve no less. Kami strode the distance to the young man on his knees and knelt in front of him. She offered a small smile and placed her hand on his cheek. When he still wouldn't lift his gaze, she cupped his chin and lifted his eyes to hers. He kept his eyes screwed shut, tears streaming down his cheeks. Her heart ached to see a child such as him, a human sacrifice, ready to accept punishment for things he never did. His place in heaven had been assured long ago. Naruto, open your eyes and look at me. Let me tell you where we are right now. We are at the junction between the living and the dead. You are neither dead nor alive right now and you are not being judged. True, your soul is bound to the foxes but only as two prisoners are fettered together at the ankle. One prisoner does not answer for the deeds of the other, they are merely chained together until their jailer brings the key. I am sorry Naruto, but your key is not yet ready to be used. You must keep your burden a while longer. Now rise and speak with me. I have something to ask of you. Naruto stood and wiped the tears from his face. He looked at Kami apologetically and asked where they were. We are in a plane made of your soul. You have heard of yin and yang, correct? The light contains some dark and the dark some light. This is how balance is kept. Where we stand and all around us is your soul, Naruto. The fox-shaped blemish on your soul is that of Kyuubi, and he stays under you because he is bound to you. Look around you, Naruto, and you will find that your soul is pure with nearly no blemish. You are as pure as they come, and that is why you are perfect for the task I must set before you. What is it you seek of me, Kami-sama? Ask and I shall do anything you require of me. Kami smiled, seeing that the boy she had watched since he was young was slowly coming back. Deciding to act the part of a young girl for a moment and not the benevolent creator, she joked with him. Burn that outfit. It's hideous. Naruto stood with wide eyes and wider mouth, making Kami giggle. When he spoke, it was hesitant and faltering. But orange is your gift to the world, Kami-sama. Why would you want me to destroy something as beautiful as my suit? Oh Naruto, you can't take a joke. That isn't my request. Although I do wish you would get rid of that thing, and I will send someone later to tell you what I wish you to wear as my emissary on Earth. I need you to find a certain soul and send him to me. His crimes are of a heretical and most unholy nature. You will act as my liaison and claim his soul for me. You want me to act as a Shinigami? Don't you already have someone for that job? Of course, but he has to follow certain rules, unlike you. I give you full reign to act as you see fit. Consider the power I give you as another test on your life and soul. When you return after your life is over, we shall see if the fox is the only visible blemish on your pure soul. Now then, I'm going to give you a weapon to help you on your path. You'll receive it when you regain consciousness and are ready. I'm not ready now? No, you will be weak when you wake up. Rest and gain your strength. When I think you are prepared, I will send my messenger to deliver my gift and help you choose clothing appropriate for my emissary. Goodbye for now, Naruto. We will see each other soon. The next thing Naruto knew, he was back in his body, and it felt heavy and his breathing was labored. His eyes fluttered open and he saw light filtering in through a window. He was lying in a bed in the hospital and he was hooked up to various machines. He slowly turned his head to look at the bedside table. No cards or anything greeted him. He sighed. It was always the same. He might have friends, but they were too busy to visit him. He closed his eyes and lay back again. Might as well rest up and get ready for what lay ahead. His rest was short-lived when he heard familiar footsteps clomping down the hall and knew he was in for a tongue lashing. Tsunade opened the door and stood at the end of the bed, checking Naruto's chart. She cocked an eyebrow and sighed. Naruto, you're not fooling anyone. I can see by the heart rate monitor that you're awake. We need to talk. Naruto cracked one eye open and stared at Tsunade. He loved the old woman to death, but he really just wanted to rest for once. He'd been through a lot in the past few days, and that dream about Kami was kind of unsettling. He didn't know if he believed it or not. He didn't remember coming back to Konoha. Perhaps he never left and it was all just a dream. All right, Ba-chan. What do you want to talk about? Your battle with Sasuke. What happened? Sakura and Kakashi didn't tell you? He stabbed me through the chest with a Chidori. End of story. I passed out and they drugged me back, I guess. Well, you should be good to go in a couple of days. You can be released then. Rest until then, you hear? I'd like nothing better. I mean it, Naruto, you'd better. Did you just agree with me? Yes? Don't go insane on me, brat. I can't be the only sane one in this hellhole of a village, alright? I need you to stay with me. I'm not going anywhere, Ba-chan. I'm right here with you, forever. Tsunade softened her glare when he said that. No matter how much she hated the moniker Ba-chan, it still made her feel good that he viewed her as a normal person and not the Hokage. Just get rested, kiddo. We need you out there again. Hi, I think for once I will take it easy. 3 days passed and Tsunade finally released Naruto from the hospital with the condition that he take it easy and not overtrain or overexert himself. He stood in the training grounds of Team 7 going through the motions of trying to loosen his muscles back to trainable condition. It would take some time, but he'd be back to top form in a couple of days. He felt a presence behind him and turned to see a man in white robes, his short brown hair blowing in the breeze, but there was no breeze. On his shoulder was a massive hammer, a warhammer, the likes of which had never been seen. He smiled at Naruto and offered a hand. Hello, young one. My name is Sanosuke. I am the go-between for you and Kami-sama. I hope to be good friends with you. You have a lot of promise, you know. Naruto, meanwhile, was staring blankly at the man. He had hardly heard a word. He could only think that it hadn't been a dream, it was real, it was all real, he had actually met Cammy. His gaze swung from the man to the massive war hammer on his shoulder and took in its weird look. It wasn't fancy by any means. The head of the hammer was a simple block of steel with golden bands around both ends. The handle was steel and it seemed that the entire hammer was poured from the same mold. Leather thongs wrapped around the hilt of the handle and formed a comfortable grip. Sanosuke smiled at Naruto and swung the hammer to the ground where it impacted and made a crater. How heavy is that thing, Sanosuke? It must weigh a ton. Hi, it does. But to you it will be as light as a feather. It is made especially for you and is a holy weapon. This is one of Cammy's gifts to you. If you prove worthy of her time, she will bestow upon you the remaining gifts. You are to learn how to use this hammer from your soulmate. She will guide you in its use and you will be happy in your life. But Sakura-chan doesn't wield weapons. She can't teach me how to use it. Sanosuke scowled at the mention of her name and thumped the hammer on the ground again, gaining Naruto's attention. Now see here, Naruto. The world does not revolve around your pink-haired friend. She is not your soulmate. There is another out there who is worthy of your time and devotion. She can train you in the art of weaponry. You know her already, she is here in this village. Wait a second, soulmate? I already told Neji I don't believe in fate, so why would I believe that I'm destined to be with a certain someone? You already think that, you fool. You keep pining over Sakura and she wouldn't be seen with you in public in that light. Your soulmate waits for you. You'll know who she is by the tightening of your heart and a deep connection. Have her teach you Kenjutsu, it will help you to wield the hammer better. They're basically the same property anyway. But why a hammer? Why not a sword? Sanosuke smiled at his young charge. He wasn't as stupid as he let on, he just refused to acknowledge the obvious. It wasn't stupidity that held Naruto back, it was inattentiveness and immaturity. This hammer is young, Naruto, it was only recently made and it was made for you. We made it fashioned after your soul. Right now the hammer is blunt and dull, screaming for attention with the two golden bands, and since you have no knowledge of how to wield it, it will be a challenge to train. This reflects you in your earlier years. You had promise, just as this hammer has promise. I told you it is a holy weapon and that is true, but it is also connected to you at the soul. As your soul evolves, so too shall the hammer. You mean it'll change on its own? Yes, overnight while you sleep it will begin its transformation. It will begin to reflect your soul now. Now come and accept your weapon, Naruto, we have something else to do. Naruto strode forward and hefted the hammer with ease. He was amazed at how light it was and swung it a few times to get a feel for it. Noticing that Sanosuke was getting antsy, he swung the hammer to his shoulder and grinned. So what's task number 2? Sanosuke grinned evilly at the young man before him, causing Naruto to begin to sweat. This part would be his favorite. He thanked Kami-sama for the opportunity to rid the world of yet another eyesore. I'm the one who's also taking you clothes shopping. You must dress appropriately if you are to be Kami-sama's liaison in this world. Nothing but the best, and I have just the idea for your battle garb. Come. Naruto took the stairs in stride as he and Sanosuke walked to the tailor. It was usually bad enough, but since he was carrying a giant war hammer, he was really getting looks now. He sighed and just kept going. Hopefully, Sanosuke wouldn't torture him too bad with dorky clothes. His traveling companion just trudged along, thinking about all the things to make his charge look like a servant of Kami, to look more like an angel. The man in the clothing store raised an eyebrow at the two men and politely asked Naruto to leave his weapon of mass destruction outside the store. The looks of the villagers when the massive weapon hit the ground was priceless, and Naruto hung around at the door for a moment to watch some try to pick it up. When even the biggest man around couldn't budge it, he was satisfied that his holy weapon was safe and that no one else could touch it. He stepped back into the entrance and found Sanosuke talking to the tailor, who seemed intrigued by the man's ideas. Do you understand what I want? It must be in the design I gave you and of the best material. Price is no object. Until the battle gear is prepared, however, we need some temporary clothing to get rid of this abomination. What do you have in simple shinobi gear? We have many things, sir. Anything in particular you would like? Just size him up for everything in black. Loose, but fitting, and get him some actual boots instead of sandals, steel-toed if possible. He'll thank me later. Now then, Naruto, kindly let the man measure you so we can get this over with. He informed me that once measurements were taken your battle garb would be finished within the week. He'd call for you then and you can pick it up. How am I going to pay for all this? I don't have enough on me to cover it. Do not worry, young one. Kami will provide. Have faith in Kami. His measurements were taken without fail and Naruto was starting to get just a bit agitated. He hated sitting still in one spot so often, but he had been strangely serene in the past few days, like he had calmed down slightly. Sanosuke noticed the conflict within the boy and spoke up. I see you have noticed that you can think a bit more clearly than before. Your meeting with my master did that. She has a most calming effect on the mind, and in your case it seemed to help your cognizant thought process. You should meditate and try to talk to her again. I believe it would be beneficial. Perhaps, I might try it later tonight. I like the feeling of being able to think clearly. It's nice. Indeed. I must go now, Naruto. I shall see you again soon, I hope. Remember what I said about your soulmate. Find her and cherish her. Do not let yourself be taken in by false hope of a love that can never be requited. Goodbye for now. And the man disappeared without a puff of smoke or anything. He just ceased to exist on this plane. No smoke. I'll have to get him to teach me that when I see him again. The week passed quickly for Naruto and he spent it in seclusion for the most part, training by himself in a remote part of the village, finding out how to at least basically handle the holy weapon before he sought out his soulmate. When he grew bored he meditated, trying to reach Kami and talk with her once more. She must have deemed him not ready to speak to her again since he never contacted her or Sanosuke once. At the end of the week he got a summons to come back to the tailor. His battle garb was ready and he had several of them made. He had worried about how to pay for his new clothing, but as Sanosuke said, Kami will provide, and the money mysteriously made its way into his bank account. He took the wrapped bundle of cloth and made his way back to his apartment to try on his new look. Deciding he didn't want to get his clothing dirty just yet, Naruto took a shower and let the water cascade over him, washing away his troubles. He smiled as he thought about his hammer. He simply left it outside his apartment, since no one was strong enough to steal it. He chuckled as he thought about the looks on people's faces when he swung it to his shoulder and walked off like it was a feather. I love messing with people. His shower over he stepped out and opened the bundle. What he saw brought a smile to his face. While his temporary clothes, as Sanosuke called them, were plain, they still looked good on him, better than the orange. His new battle garb made him look like an angel. It consisted of white pants and a white gi made of silk that flowed about his body. A blood-red sash tied at the waist that seemed to move of its own accord held the gi together. The small breeze generated by the air conditioning system made the sash flap and flutter like he stood in a hurricane. It was no doubt there to draw the attention of the enemy. What surprised him the most, however, were the markings on the back of all the GIs. A yin-yang circle encompassed most of the back, but instead of a dot showing the good or evil, there was the body of a nine-tailed fox, its tail splayed out on display. He fell in love with it instantly. He may hate the fox, but this was obviously Kami approved and there was nothing wrong with that. He smiled and laid the clothing out for use the next morning. He definitely surprised Tsunade when he showed up in her office. True to form, Naruto kept turning heads as he walked through the streets carrying his monstrous hammer. It hadn't changed yet like Sanosuke said it would, but then again, good things come to those who wait. Nothing the angel had said had been a lie yet, so perhaps he just underestimated how the hammer was evaluating Naruto's soul. Naruto did notice that not all the looks were glares, however. More than a few girls were blushing and he could just faintly hear them whispering about the hot blonde guy. He smirked and kept going to the Hokage Tower. Today was gonna be a good day. Tsunade was busy with her paperwork for once when she heard Shizune arguing with someone outside the door. Focusing some chakra to her ears, she listened in. Don't care, you're not bringing that thing in there. Leave it outside, Naruto. I'm not playing around. If you drop it, it's going to go through all the floors. I'm not gonna drop it, Shizune, it'll stay on my shoulder the whole time. And besides, Ba-chan's a busy woman. I'll just show her what I got and be on my way. No big deal. Now let me through. Put that hunk of metal back outside. Shizune, move. Well, that was a shocker. Naruto is never forceful with Shizune. She usually gets her way by bossing him around like an older sister, but the brat must have something important to tell if he resorted to yelling at her. Tsunade's thoughts were broken as the door opened and Naruto had to duck to get inside. Shizune followed him, to remind him not to drop the damn thing and put a hole in the floor. One destructive blonde in the Hokage office was enough. Her piece said, Shizune left out in a huff. Naruto sighed, he'd have to do something nice for her later for yelling at her. He turned to address Tsunade but found her instead poking and prodding his hammer. What the hell is this thing, Naruto? Have you and Ten been playing around in the old weapons shed again? No, and we don't play around in there. We search for old weapons that she can resharpen or remold into better weapons. This is mine. It's a holy weapon given to me by Kami. Since when did you become religious, kid? I didn't. It's a gift from Kami to help me find a certain soul she wants. It's enchanted so only I can pick it up. Here, try to lift it off my shoulder. Try as she might, Tsunade couldn't budge the damn thing. And she had picked up Gamabunta's Kodachi. The thing must be enchanted. But how Naruto ended up with an enchanted weapon was beyond her. Damn, kid had all the luck. Well, the weapon is dull like you, but what about the clothes? I like the new style, Naruto, it's definitely you. Thanks, it was a gift from a new friend. He said my jumpsuit was hideous and burnt it once I got my new clothes. Well, where is he? I want to give him pay for an S-rank mission. That's been on the pay scale for quite a while to rid the world of that damn jumpsuit, and someone finally had the balls to do it. You know, I've actually outlawed the sale of orange jumpsuits in Konoha because of you? But orange is the color of the gods. It's a gift from Kami herself. Herself? I thought Kami was a guy? Naruto shrugged and gave a sheepish grin. She appeared to me and told me that she was neither, but I'm more at ease around women, so she appeared as a young girl. Real cute too. Too bad she's so much older than me, she'd be worth the effort. You'd actually hit on Kami? Naruto, you're insane. But that's what I like about you. Now get out of here and go train with your weapon. I have things to do. Before I get out of your hair, I have a favor to ask. I need time off to find my soulmate, who's going to train me in the way of using the hammer by teaching me kenjutsu. Okay? Tsunade just raised an eyebrow and nodded dumbly. First the kid defies death, now he's Kami's right-hand man or something? Fuck this job, I'm too old for this shit, she thought. Hitting the page button on her intercom, she called Shizune. Shizune, bring some sake and 2 cups. I think you and I are going to need to be shit-faced before the day is over. A soft voice came back over the intercom, and Tsunade was surprised to hear her assistant answer in such a manner. After seeing that big-ass hammer he's lugging around, I went and bought a few bottles of good stuff. I think you and I are going to be holed up doing paperwork for quite a while. Tsunade thought, good old Shizune. She always comes through. And damn that brat for always giving me a headache. It was then Tsunade realized her mistake and slammed her head on the desk. She'd let the little bastard have an indefinite amount of time off, in the village, with nothing to do but train and look for his soulmate. She groaned audibly. That pile of paperwork was going to be a mountain with that kid running loose. Naruto strode through town, wondering who his soulmate could be. He knew her obviously, but who could it be? He knew a lot of people and a lot of them were good with kenjutsu. Deciding to worry about it later, he made his way to the training grounds and began to swing the hammer around wildly, not knowing anything about grace. It just wasn't his style, and he still lamented the fact that he was given a hammer instead of a sword. A sword was sharp and pointy, able to do massive damage. What could this thing possibly do that a sword couldn't? It was so plain and dull. Naruto sat down in the middle of the field cross-legged with his elbow on one knee and his chin in his hand, the other hand holding onto the massive hammer. He looked out of the corner of his eyes at it and took it in one more time. The handle was a good 4 feet long and seemed to flow into the head. The head of the hammer was massive, roughly 2 feet by 2 feet square and about 3 feet long. It was no wonder he kept getting odd looks in town. He closed his eyes and thought about his situation now. He already had so much on his plate, what with saving Sasuke, and now he was expected to locate a renegade soul. He let go of the hammer and held his head in his hands. He was 16 years old. He held a demon that could destroy civilizations in his navel. He had just been informed by Kami herself that Sakura was not meant for him. It hurt, but he'd have to get over her and move on. He still had to save Sasuke for her. He'd made a promise and he never went back on those. He had to find his soulmate and learn the art of the sword so that he would be able to wield his hammer properly. Why did it always feel like the weight of the world was on his shoulders? Sighing heavily, he opened his eyes to find the world pitch black. It was night. He had been thinking so hard he hadn't noticed that night had fell. It was time to go home. Perhaps tonight his hammer would change. He swung the hammer to his shoulder and walked off toward his apartment. Naruto set the weapon down outside of his building with a loud thud and walked up the stairs. As he opened the door he felt a presence and whipped two kunai at the shadowy figure. He heard the audible thump of the knives hitting home, flicked on the light, and found Sanosuke there with the kunai in his chest and a scowl on his face. Naruto grinned sheepishly as the angel removed the knives and bemoaned the ruination of his shirt. "I just had this thing cleaned, Naruto. Can you be any more problematic?" "Well, I'm sorry, but you surprised me. I couldn't help it. What are you here for anyway? I want to know why your hammer hasn't changed yet. It should have made its first change and, where is your hammer?" "Oh, I left it downstairs. I don't want it falling through the floor." "You idiot, that's why it isn't changing. You have to sleep with it in your hand. What in the hell made you think it could change if it wasn't by you? You may be connected at the soul with it, but you still have to have contact with it to make the change. And you wonder why everyone calls you an idiot. I'm not stupid. You don't think before you do things. Sigh. Naruto, just get the hammer and sleep at the training grounds tonight. Sleep with the hammer in your hand and don't let go. If you prove yourself worthy by changing the hammer, I'll give you the other gift a little early." "Is it another cool weapon?" "No, it isn't cool, but it is a weapon, perhaps more important than the hammer. I won't tell you what it is though until you change the hammer. Now get going." "Oh Kami, why do you make me deal with these idiots?" The angel disappeared into thin air and Naruto grumbled while retrieving his hammer. He had just come from the training grounds and he didn't really want to sleep outside tonight. A shower and his bed sounded so much better, but he had to change the hammer. He trudged back to the training grounds and stopped at the first one he came to. He didn't care whose it was, they could wake him in the morning if he was in the way. He flopped down on the ground and stared at the stars. He held the hammer at his side and hummed while he twirled it in his hand. After a short time he began to yawn and eventually nodded off, his hand wrapped tightly around the hilt. It wasn't long before a weird dream started. In the dream Naruto was all alone and everything was black. Then came a bright light and the world was white and it reminded him of his soul when he spoke to Kami. Then came the people and there were crowds of them, but no matter how much he tried to get their attention, they ignored him and kept walking. He noticed that they all stared down and behind him as they walked by, before turning their noses up and continuing onward. Curious, he looked behind him to find that his shadow was that of a fox and no matter where he ran it followed, its 9 tails billowing behind it. Out of the crowd stepped an old man with a kind face, smoking a pipe with a funny hat on his head, and he was kind to Naruto, offering him encouragement. Naruto smiled at the old man and felt his heart lighten. He turned to his shadow and if it wasn't just his imagination, the fox had shrunk slightly. He turned around to face the old man and found another man there, this one younger with his hair pulled back into a strange ponytail. He also was kind to Naruto, but he was stern, demanding better from him than he offered. The rest of the crowd walked on by, but Naruto was content for the moment, he was at least noticed. Out of the crowd stepped another man, a young girl, and a young boy, and while they wouldn't talk to Naruto, they acknowledged his existence and stood staring at him. A little boy walked up and Naruto felt what was awe and admiration coming from him and the fox shrank a little more. Next came a figure whose silhouette Naruto would never forget as long as he lived. It was that of an effeminate young man and though he could not see the eyes, the sad smile told him everything he needed to know. Naruto's heart ached and he nearly cried. This had been the closest thing he had ever had to a friend, someone who could understand him, but as quickly as the boy appeared, he vanished, leaving a saddened Naruto and the fox grew a little again. Out of the constantly surging crowd stepped 6 figures, kids his age, and they all acknowledged him. 3 more emerged and one held for him a respect that only those who have bled and fought for acknowledgement could hold. This one was a friend he would treasure forever. The other boy held contempt for him while the girl was neutral, she felt nothing, but she noticed him. Behind the 9 children appeared 3 more adults and they stared at him with kindness. And the fox shrank more. Then came 3 familiar figures, 2 more boys and a girl, but one boy strode forward and faced him with a maniacal grin, the shadow of a tanuki behind him. The 2 stood and their shadows fought for a moment, the fox and tanuki shades becoming more and more massive, before they both receded and the 2 boys looked at each other and smiled, knowing they had found someone who shared their pain. It was at this time that Naruto felt a pain in his heart and he saw the old man fade away, a sad smile on his face. In his place stepped another figure, a tall, broad-shouldered man with long hair. From behind him came two more women and they looked at him and he was happy. These three saw him for who he was. And the fox shrank further. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw the first boy begin to fade until he was little more than an apparition, there in spirit but gone from his life. His shadow still remained though, letting Naruto know that he could be saved, but the effort and cost would more than likely be great. The girl standing beside the boy saddened and looked about to cry. Naruto could do nothing but look on and feel helpless. And the fox grew a tiny bit. Then all the figures disappeared except the tall, long-haired man, and he and Naruto began to walk through the crowd. They walked and walked for what seemed like forever and Naruto felt himself grow, the ground seeming to get further and further from his eyes, and the shadow of the fox grew as he did. The figures all came back, except now they were bigger, more mature, and they all looked on him kindly. He had made strides and now had more friends. The apparition of the boy had grown as well, but it had darkened as if tainted by evil. This confused Naruto and he wanted to save the boy. Before he could think, the boy with the tanuki shadow blinked out of existence and Naruto rushed to where he was, his heart heavy. As fast as he disappeared though, he reappeared, this time without the shadow of the tanuki, and Naruto was happy for his friend. He was a survivor. Out of all the figures though, he noticed that one seemed to be brighter or perhaps more defined than the others. The bun-haired girl that reminded him of a panda smiled at him and he felt his heart lighten. Things shifted again however, and another person showed up. This person was kind and patient with him and had a strange forehead protector. Along with him came a figure that reminded him of the apparition, but he had no personality and seemed to be fixated on Naruto's penis. While annoying, Naruto could see that all he needed was a friend to show him the way, and so he made his peace with the strange figure. Then one of the adults blinked out of existence and didn't return, and three of the figures his age were saddened deeply. One of the adult women, who was with child now, was also saddened by this. And the fox grew a bit more. The scene changed again and Naruto found himself, the first girl, and the first boy together again, but under dire circumstances. The shadow of the boy was dark and radiated evil, and in the shadow stood a completely dark figure, its soul so tainted with evil that the figure itself could not be seen, but it was identified by the way it held itself and its indistinguishable outline. The fox grew and grew until it threatened to overtake Naruto, but the man with the strange headgear saved him and the girl wept for him, and the fox receded. The scene changed one last time and Naruto found himself once again in front of the first boy. They fought and fought, neither having the advantage until Naruto, in his pity, didn't finish his blow and the boy once again tried to kill him. He remembered his meeting with Kami and meeting Sanosuke and getting his hammer. The outline of the one who was to be his soulmate flashed before him one last time before everything went dark again. And the fox was smaller than ever. In the blackness, Naruto floated, thinking over what he had seen. He knew only one thing and it was undeniable. I love you all and yet, I am strong without you. People come and people go, and though my heart is heavy when you leave, it repairs itself and I too continue on. Forgive me everyone, but I can no longer continue to play the fool for you. My soul and others depends on me succeeding in whatever Kami puts before me and I cannot fail. I make a solemn vow to you, my friends. Uzumaki Naruto will never abandon you, though some of you may abandon me. Whatever kindness you have given me in my short life will be returned tenfold and I shall hold you forever in my thoughts. But those who have ran to the darkness will no longer receive my mercy. My compassion, yes, my pity, yes, but no longer my mercy. Kami, have mercy on your soul, Sasuke, Orochimaru, because I surely will not. And the shadow of the fox grew smaller still. Outside of Naruto's mind, in the waking world, his hammer was reacting to its wielder's dream. It seemed to hum happily, ecstatic that its owner had come to a conclusion that was to its liking. Starting by the hand that held it, the hammer began to change. Its leather thong became thicker and plusher, more defined, and had intricate designs seemingly burned into it. The magical transformation crept up the handle, turning the dull gray steel a dark black, with a white flame design licking up the side all the way to the head. The gold bands widened until they encompassed the head of the hammer like a cocoon. Slowly, cracks began to show until it burst, revealing the newly transformed war hammer. The body of the hammer was a pure white with intricate gold designs snaking around it, making it look like the holy weapon it was. The bands were gone, nowhere to be seen. On top of the hammer sat a large spike, as black as night, that reflected no light. The ends of the hammer remained flat, but around the edge of the ends was a sort of powder substance that shimmered in the light of the dawn. On either side of the hammer was the yin-yang symbol with the fox's shape instead of the dot. It was upon this scene that Ten stumbled. She had seen Naruto around town with the massive hunk of metal but hadn't had the time to ask him about it. She loved all weaponry and seeing someone with such a rare weapon as a warhammer was a treat. Surely Naruto wasn't taking up the use of such a weapon, especially one so massive. She wasn't sure if he could even swing it. She had come early that morning to get started on her training and found a knocked-out Naruto. She had meant to wake him up but instead became entranced by the show his hammer put on. Surely, this was an enchanted weapon, the likes of which she had never seen and may never see again. He wouldn't notice, she'd just sneak up real quick and examine it, before waking him up and sending him on his way. She looked over the hammer and was enthralled by its design. The coloring of it was too mystical to be man-made and the shimmering around its edges was unnatural as well. She slid her finger over the powder-looking surface and felt her finger cut open. She pulled the digit back and looked at it in the dawning light. Blood? She inspected the powder closer and nearly gasped. It was diamond dust, with bits of diamond jutting here and there. If he connected with this hammer it would shred whatever it touched, if they got over being hit with the juggernaut of a weapon. Through examining the momentary object of her interest, she turned her gaze to Naruto, intent on waking him up. She couldn't do it. She just sat there, drinking up his looks. He had grown so much and had seen so much battle, and yet as he lay there, she thought she had never seen anyone look more innocent. She took in everything from how his hair blew barely in the small breeze to how his whisker marks had deepened over the years. She smiled when she saw his mouth slightly open and could see the elongated fangs whenever his nose twitched, lifting his upper lip. He looked so animalistic and yet so tame. She nearly giggled to herself, thinking about how such a formidable ninja could be such a teddy bear outside of battle. He could take down S-class nin without blinking an eye and yet Sakura could pound his ass into the ground without trying. He simply refused to hurt anyone he considered a friend. She scowled, thinking of the Uchiha. That's probably why they've never caught him. Naruto simply can't bring himself to harm the bastard. She leaned over him to wake him and found herself staring into his deep blue eyes. Her breath hitched and she nearly gasped. She had never really noticed how blue and beautiful they were. Coupled with that smile of his, she nearly melted in her shoes. She damn near overheated blushing, however, when he looked at her with half-lidded eyes and gave her a small grin. Wow, Cammy is so good to me. I get a hammer and a pretty angel as gifts. I'm truly blessed. Ten passed out from a blood rush to the head, with a smile on her face. Ah, to be treated so romantically by my own imagination, thought Ten. No one had ever said anything like that to her before. She was always viewed as a tomboy. Too bad the blonde angel in her dream hadn't been real. If he was, she'd give anything to get to know him better. Somewhere, far away, she heard her name being called and she didn't want to answer the call. She wanted to stay with the blonde angel. No, don't make me get up yet. Hey Ten. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend or anything. Please wake up. Ten opened her eyes slowly, letting the light filter in as slowly as possible. She still had the image of the blonde angel on her eyelids, and as her brown eyes blossomed openward, that image was becoming more and more solid until she was staring him in the face. She blinked and rubbed her eyes and he was still there. Not thinking before she said anything, she said the first thing to come to mind. Seems Cammy answered my prayer. The blonde angel is still here. Now it was Naruto's turn to blush, but he didn't faint. He had far too much willpower for that. He instead opted to change the subject. So, what are you doing here so early, Ten? I came to train early, but I found you lying here instead. I watched your hammer change. Is it enchanted? No, it's a holy hammer. It will change over time to suit my soul, I've been told. A man named Sanosuke gave it to me and told me to use it for Cammy's will. Wow, that's cool. Do you know how to use it? No. I'm supposed to find a certain someone to teach me how to use it, but I haven't found her yet. Her? You're getting a woman to teach you? I don't think there are too many people besides Tsunade-sama who could pick up that thing, and even then none use hammers. I'm the weapons mistress of Konoha and I don't even know how to wield hammers properly. Well, I'm actually supposed to get a certain someone to teach me Kenjutsu, and Sanosuke said it would help me use the hammer correctly. I just have to find someone. I could teach you. I'm one of the best swordsmen in the village. Oh no, I couldn't impose on you. No matter how much my heart tells me yes. Wait, tells me yes. Oh, it's no problem. I don't mind at all. It's no trouble. Please say yes, please say yes. I would suggest you say yes, Naruto. The young lady looks like she can become quite insistent and persuasive. Yeah, you're probably right, Sanosuke? What are you doing here? Sanosuke smirked and folded his arms. The boy's soulmate sat in front of him and he had yet to realize it. Oh well, that was a teasing for another day. Right now he had to inspect the boy's new hammer. He picked it up and spun it this way and that. Very impressive. The boy's soul was indeed a wondrous thing. No telling how far this hammer would evolve. He'd never seen a holy weapon take on such a look or form. This was, after all, the first holy hammer he'd ever seen. Very good, Naruto. You've unlocked the first of many forms for your hammer. I applaud you for the way your soul reflects on it. Beautiful and yet deadly. Judging from the diamond dust around the edge, it signifies your diamond in the rough status. You are a rare gem waiting to be discovered and shown to the world. I commend you yet again. Wow, thought both Naruto and Tenten, that was poetic. Now then, Naruto, I need to give you your second gift. Come, stand before me and clear your mind. Naruto stepped forward cautiously and did his best to clear his mind, thinking of nothing. Sanosuke put his hands to Naruto's temples and began his task of giving the boy his gift. He watched as Naruto gritted his teeth and bit back a scream, his facial features contorting and his whisker marks and teeth, flicking back and forth between demonic and normal. After several moments, Naruto fell back onto the ground panting and Sanosuke stood as if nothing passed. Tenten looked back and forth from one man to the other. What did you do to him? Sanosuke smiled at his young charge's unacknowledged soulmate and tapped his forehead. I just gave him his second gift from Kami. Call it a jumpstart of his cognitive abilities. Now he shouldn't be so likely to jump into things without thinking. And maybe, just maybe, he'll see the pretty girl in front of him for what she really is. Make sure he stays out of trouble when he wakes up, okay? Bye-bye. Without a sound, Sanosuke vanished from this world. Tenten stood in awe as the man had gone without a swirl of leaves or a poof of smoke. He just vanished, and it wasn't speed. She looked back down at Naruto and blushed again. Damn him for looking so handsome. Deciding to get this over with, she shook his shoulders and for the second time that day watched as his eyes opened. She gasped and held him by the shoulders, looking deeply into his eyes, while he blinked and looked at her like she was crazy. Tenten? Not that I mind being held down by a pretty girl, but can you let me up? What do you find so interesting in my eyes anyway? Tenten reached over to her pack and pulled out a mirror and held it up to his eyes. He inspected his eyes for all of 2 seconds and dropped the mirror before picking it up again. What the hell did he do to my eyes? I don't know, but they're more beautiful than ever. Naruto stared at her with wide eyes. He had been told before that he had nice eyes, but he thought the people were just being that nice. Now here was a beautiful kunoichi telling him that his eyes were beautiful. He looked into the mirror one last time and was dumbstruck by the reflection. His eyes were still blue, but now they had 4 silver stars around the iris that seemed to shine with an ethereal glow. He handed the mirror back to Tenten and felt the tightness in his chest again when her hand brushed his. He remembered Sanosuke's words from days earlier and gave her a small smile. You know what, Tenten? If that offer to teach me Kenjutsu still stands, I'll take you up on it. Tenten merely nodded her head, but on the inside she was doing a victory dance. A chance to train someone in a new weapon and ogle them at the same time. Life was good. It was hard for Tenten to keep her focus when the boy in front of her was shirtless, had a body most would die for, and was swinging a massive hammer like it was a stick. She sighed, for what seemed the 100th time that morning. No matter how much promise he had, Naruto simply couldn't seem to get the stances right. He was simply too much of a free-form fighter, flowing with whatever worked at the moment. Naruto, stop, please just stop. Your form is horrible. You keep stepping out of the stances I show you, and for the love of Kami, don't just swing the hammer around. You have to use it like an extension of yourself. But 1010, it is an extension of myself. It's connected to my soul. Can't get any more extensive than that. That's not the point and you know it, Naruto. You have to listen to me if you want to do this right. Alright, let's try a different approach. I'm going to stand beside you and perform a kata and I want you to mimic it perfectly. Anything less than perfection and we'll do it again and again until you have it right. Slave driver. You try having made a guy for a sensei and we'll see whether or not I'm being kind. Now do what I do, or else. Or else what? I don't know yet, but the general idea is you, me, and several pointy things aimed at sensitive parts. Now follow my lead. She stepped into her stance and stood still while he mimicked her. Good, that's a good start. Moving forward, she dipped the sword low and brought it back up in a sweeping, crescent moon motion, and watched out of the corner of her eye as he did the same with the hammer. The object wasn't to teach him how to use a sword, but how to wield the hammer so that it seemed second nature, so that he wasn't so awkward with it. Seeing him stumble out of what would have been a perfect kata at the last second, she sighed. It was going to be a long day. Lunchtime rolled around before they knew it and Naruto decided to treat 1010 to whatever she wanted. Her choice was sushi, at the newest sushi bar in town and the most expensive. Not wanting to look like a cheap date, Naruto went along with it, inwardly cursing his chivalrous nature and the loss of Gama-chan's swollen belly. 1010 was to sushi what Naruto was to ramen. A glutton of the highest caliber and able to destroy wallets in a single stop. Sighing in defeat, Naruto followed the insistent bun-haired girl in, only to be escorted out by the owner, who told him to leave the behemoth of an elephant slayer outside. No problems there, a twist of the shoulder, a flick of the wrist, and a resounding boom and the offending object was in its own little crater, not bothering anyone. Shrugging, he returned to his table, ignoring the owner's gaping. 1010 was thoroughly enjoying herself at the moment. She had good food, good drink, and the company of a very handsome blonde to keep her happy. The looks of jealousy that some of the younger girls in the restaurant kept throwing her was only making her smirk larger and more defined. Neji wouldn't have garnered this type of reaction. He was too quiet and unassuming, even if he was hot. Naruto, on the other hand, commanded attention, from his voice, which was softer than normal thanks to that trick of Sanosuke's, to his wild look, to his gentlemanly treatment of 1010. Their conversation was what kept her entertained the most, however. She knew that he was a demon container from the time that they rescued Gaara, but she didn't know that the boy was so deep. So tell me, Naruto, what are you going to do with that hammer? I can't imagine you just coming across an enchanted weapon by accident. Well, first it's a holy weapon, not an enchanted one. Second, I'll tell you later, once we leave here. Sigh, you're never going to believe me, 1010. You're going to think I'm insane. You rushed Neji, a master of the Byakugan, head on and you expect me to think you're not insane? Naruto, there aren't many things you could tell me that would make me think you're off your rocker. Naruto grinned at that statement. If there was one fault to him, good or bad, it was his need and ability to prove people wrong. Wanna bet? After a lengthy explanation on his apparent death, his meeting with Kami, the angel Sanosuke who delivered his hammer, and his need to find his soulmate to have kenjutsu lessons, 1010 was, suffice to say, certifiably stunned. This boy was insane, scratch that, he was batshit loco. Nobody could be expected to believe everything that he said, and yet, Naruto was a contradiction unto himself. Here was a guy who had every reason to hate the world and want to kill everyone, but instead he was one of the happiest, sweetest, nicest people you could ever want to meet. You couldn't help but be uplifted by his spirit and a smile could only grace your face, no matter how hard you fought. She knew this from experience. She had seen Neji try too often to keep his scowl only to lose it. But Naruto was pushing the boundaries of her patience and her sanity. She'd have accepted the fact that he found the hammer by accident and that it had simply claimed him for its master. That was acceptable. Being told that you were the right hand of Kami on earth was not acceptable. It was blasphemous. Saying that your soulmate would train you in the art of swords to use a hammer was downright ludicrous. But on the other hand, Naruto was a Jinchuriki, a human sacrifice, jailer of the fearsome Kyuubi. Perhaps being Kami's own personal shinobi wasn't so far-fetched after all. Naruto, do you really expect me to believe all that? Really and truly? Sigh, 1010. I don't expect you to believe anything you don't want to believe. I want you to believe me, as my friend. It's not that far a stretch after all. Shinobi have near-death experiences all the time. I just happened to meet with the kami. I'm a special case, you know? Look, if you don't believe me, I'll find someone else to teach me kenjutsu. I don't want to bother you for a cause that seems unworthy. That statement bothered Ten more than she thought it would. She had an irrational want, no, a need, to show him the way. Naruto walking away from her at this point was another thing that was not acceptable. Wait, let's not be hasty. It's not that I don't believe you, it's just a lot to take in. Give me a chance, please? Please? Naruto sighed and rubbed his temples to relieve the pain of the building headache. He was deep in thought, a feat that used to be impossible, when he thought of the perfect idea. Tell you what, I'll have Sanosuke come again and you can talk to him yourself. Then you'll have to believe me. Back at the training fields, Naruto and Ten stood awaiting Sanosuke. Well, Ten stood while Naruto was meditating, a fact that still shook Ten. Seriously, the guy was just as hyperactive as Lee and yet he was able to sit still long enough to go into a meditative stance? As if her day couldn't get any weirder, she thought she heard Naruto mumble a goodbye to someone as he stood up. He opened his eyes and she seemed to drown in the blue, the silver stars being the only buoys to keep her from getting lost in the oceanic depths. She came back to reality when he snapped his fingers in front of her face, effectively bringing her out of her self-induced coma. He'll be here shortly. He seems to think a great deal of you for some reason. He does? Well, I hope I don't disappoint him. Trust me, young lady, you don't disappoint. In fact, you exceed my expectations. Both teenagers whipped around to see the brown-haired man with his hands behind his back, smiling at them. I'm here to answer any questions you might have. Now what do you want to know? Remember that all of this is between you, me, and Naruto. Ten pondered for a while before carefully choosing her question. Are you really an angel? Of course I am. How else could I have bestowed that gift upon Naruto earlier? I didn't see you bestow a gift. All I saw was his eyes change. That could be a very powerful, very suggestive genjutsu. Naruto sighed as she tried to take apart everything Sanosuke said. He decided to nip it in the bud. Ten, it's not a genjutsu. You're good enough to dispel one if you sensed it. She blushed slightly at the praise but remained steadfast nonetheless. Her analytical mind was going non-stop at the moment. Prove to me that you're an angel. Do something angelic. Sanosuke raised an eyebrow and gave her a skeptical look. Like what, pray tell? I don't know. Part the waters, bring a dead person back to life, throw your voice, do something. Ninja can do all those things. It won't prove I'm an angel and you know that. Then tell me something only an angel would know. He smiled and leaned over and whispered in her ear. Her eyes got wider and wider and her face redder and redder. From embarrassment or anger Naruto couldn't tell, until she couldn't take it anymore and she slapped Sanosuke hard. Being an angel, however, he didn't budge, just took the blow as it came. He smiled at a very red Ten and winked at Naruto, who was most definitely not smiling at him. How come every man I meet is a freaking pervert? What did you say to her? Ten took the moment to give Sanosuke a death glare and then turned her attention to Naruto. Never you mind what he said to me. I believed you, okay? He's an angel and you're the right hand of Kami. I believe you. Now if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go home and relieve some anger on the training posts in my backyard. I'll see you here tomorrow at 7. But Ten, there's still light out. And you can pound the posts here. She wheeled around suddenly, her eyes aflame. I am going home. I am going to take out my frustration on my training posts. I am going to take a shower and then I am going to bed. Good night, Mr. Uzumaki. I shall see you in the morning. And as for you, you tell him what you said, an angel or not, you'll wish that you'd never been born. Made. Fuck it. You'll pay. And then she was gone. Naruto stood like a statue, frozen in place. Man, she's scarier than Sakura when she's pissed. I hope I can get along with her. I'm going to go back to training on that stance she taught me. I'll talk to you later, Sanosuke. And thanks for talking to her. Sanosuke grinned and crossed his arms in front of his chest. You don't want to know what I said to her? Come on, Naruto, show a sense of adventure. Live a little. Thanks, but I'd rather live a lot. I've seen what a pissed off Ten can do to Lee and I'm not going to have a kunai anywhere near my dangly parts. So just bug her off. Alright then, but you may want to ask her about that night when she... Naruto stuck his fingers in his ears and shut his eyes. La, I can't fucking hear you. 1010 was fuming when she got home. The training posts were soon reduced to nothing but sawdust, and a very filthy and aggravated weapons mistress thought a bath would cool her down and help her relax. As soon as her muscles hit the water, the scowl disappeared from her face to be replaced with a slight upwards motion of the lips. She leaned back and just rested her sore bones. I wonder if I was too hasty leaving today. Sure, the angel pissed me off, but that didn't mean I had to take it out on Naruto. I'll need to apologize to him tomorrow. Don't want to become another Sakura, always hitting him and talking down to him for no reason. This thought made her frown. She was nothing like Sakura. Whereas the pink-haired girl stood out in a crowd, 1010 hung back and was unassuming. Compared to some other kunoichi, 1010 was kind of plain. Simple brown hair, simple brown eyes. She looked down at her body and gave herself a once-over. Her body was very lithe, not built for power but for flexibility, the ability to hurl her weapons and use her natural feminine grace to her advantage. She was proud of her body, and though she wasn't as ample as the Hokage, she was no slouch either. She nearly blushed as she thought back to that morning, to when she had went to waken Naruto. Half asleep, he had called her an angel. He thought she was beautiful. Too bad he probably didn't remember it, because he could have capitalized on that comment. She imagined those eyes of his again and that foxy grin. She smiled in spite of herself. She wanted to caress those whisker marks and rub his hair. She snickered at that thought. Something about him just reminded her of a fox kit, cute, pettable, and trusting. The snicker became a laugh. If she rubbed his belly and got him a bowl of ramen, he'd probably follow her around like a little lost puppy. She was beginning to like the idea of hanging out with Naruto more and more each second. It would definitely never be boring. Getting out of the bath, she toweled off and trudged to her room, stopping in front of her mirror and admiring her body in a different light. She wondered for a moment if Naruto liked girls like her and stopped cold. Why in the hell would she care what Uzumaki Naruto thought about her? He was a sweet guy, sure. Lunch at the sushi bar had proven that, but he wasn't boyfriend material. Hell, on a good day, he could be just as, if not more than, annoying than Lee and Guy together. With the sunset genjutsu, these thoughts were stopping her from sleeping, she realized. With a growl and a promise to train Naruto into the ground the next day, 1010 rolled over and went to sleep. Hours prior to 1010's going to sleep, Naruto stood watching her back as she walked away. He never had been so afraid and yet had never been so interested in anyone in his life. Shaking his head, he turned back and grasped his hammer, lifting it into the stance she taught him. Sanosuke stood there, silent, watching and waiting to give an opinion or help him adjust his stance. With 1010 no longer distracting him, however, Naruto was going through the motions with no problem. His hammer sat in front of him on the ground, the palm of his right hand resting on the end of the handle, the left hand held at its side. With a quick tap of the left hand, the hammer spun into the air and was quickly caught by Naruto, who twirled it around like a baton, striking it in a figure-8 motion before driving it head first into the ground, standing like he never moved. Sanosuke was more than surprised by this and made his surprise known. "Oi, Naruto. When 1010 was here, you were tripping over your own feet and now you've got the move mostly down. Don't tell me you were distracted by her tomboyish charm." Naruto had the good grace to blush, but his words were quite sharp and heated. "Shut up, it's not like that. I just calmed myself and remembered what she said, that's all. She's a really good teacher when she's not trying to kill you." "Scary, yes, but a good teacher. I think I'll look forward to mastering everything she teaches me." He heard a snort come from behind him and turned to glare at Sanosuke, who had a wide grin on his face. "You think just because you did it right once that you've got it mastered? Idiot, there's a reason she's known as the weapons mistress of Konoha. That girl is a master of nearly every weapon out there. You, on the other hand, are a clod who has mastered one stance of a kenjutsu style. You don't even know what moves can be used to follow that one up, and I'm not totally convinced that your doing that wasn't a fluke." "It wasn't a fluke. I did that perfectly." "No, you didn't. You overextended your knee when you twirled the hammer on the 5th rotation. You could have pulled your arm out of socket as off balance as you were. But the hammer's so light, it's like spinning a baton. It's light because it's an extension of you. I can ask Cammy to make it heavier if you're going to be such a smartass." No, that's all right. I'm sorry. I'm just going to continue my training now. You can go now. Tell me, Naruto. What are your plans for the future? Naruto stopped in the middle of what he was doing and put both hands on the end of the handle, resting his chin on his hands. Pondering his words, he thought long and hard before answering. I will do what Kami needs me to do. Then I will live out the rest of my life for me and my soulmate. I have lived in the service of those who don't appreciate me for too long now. I promised Sakura that I would bring Sasuke back and I intend to do that. And Uzumaki never breaks a promise. But you're the only Uzumaki, Naruto. Then that means that my children will carry my words into the future. It will be a matter of family honor that an Uzumaki never breaks his word. Sanosuke took this moment to give Naruto a pearl of wisdom that he would ponder upon for years to come. Naruto, you've heard the stories about a demon and promises, right? Yeah, so? Naruto, your need to fulfill promises comes from the demon inside of you. It is one of the few noble traits he had. But whereas you will announce a promise and carry it out till the end, the Kyuubi never gave its word unless it could twist it to its advantage. That is why a demon will never promise anything unless it can get something out of it from the person it promised it to. But I never expected anything from Sakura. Yes, you did. Subconsciously you craved her love and attention. You wanted to bring Sasuke back out of the premise that she would love you. You made the promise on the thought that you would get something out of it. That's just the demon's nature in you. Sorry you had to hear it from me, but that's the way it is. If that's true, that I expect to get things for doing things, then what am I supposed to do for 10-10 for these lessons? Sanosuke's grin threatened to split his face and he laughed before taunting Naruto and disappearing. Now that Mboy is part of the riddle. You've got to figure that out on your own. People within a quarter mile of the training grounds felt the impacts as Naruto tore into the ground with his hammer, making craters and swearing the whole time. Angels were so troublesome. Naruto arrived home a bit later than usual due to his training regimen. He had used the cage bunshin method to get that one stance down to an art form. The hammer flowed in his hands and he felt proud of his accomplishment. That is, until he remembered what Sanosuke said about pride in one technique. One technique does not a good ninja make, he thought to himself. Thumping the hammer down hard outside the stairwell, he made his way to his apartment. After fumbling with his keys for a bit, he managed to make it inside. For some reason, instead of feeling good to be home, he felt even more lonely than usual. He couldn't figure it out, but something was bothering him. He suddenly missed the companionship of another person, like a piece of him was missing. Perplexed, he heated some water and got a bowl of cup ramen from the cupboard. Stuffing the noodles into his mouth, he twisted and turned the problem in his head, but still came up with nothing. Perhaps it's another of Sanosuke's tests. He thought back to what Sanosuke had said before he disappeared and made no sense of that either. If a promise was supposed to net him something in return for his help, what was he supposed to give 10-10 in return for hers? Growling furiously, he chunked the cup in the trash and stalked off to go to bed. He'd figure it out in the morning. Morning came, and Naruto found himself back at the training grounds, waiting for 10-10 to show up. It wasn't rare for him to be the first one to arrive for anything, but he figured with Maida Guy as a sensei that she would have at least got there at the same time. Deciding to put the time he had to good use, he made a few cage bunshins and went to work on the stands. They all moved in synchronization and it made for a very interesting sight. It was like looking at a professional dance troupe except the dancers had big-ass hammers. 10-10 apparently had a knack for showing up to see things that piqued her interest, because when she arrived she saw not one but 5 Narutos, all with hammers, performing the stance she taught him flawlessly. She watched, entranced, behind a tree. Now 10-10 had thought she had seen it all. She's trained with a pompous Hyuga, 2 workaholics with masochistic tendencies, and fought a bunch of super-powered foes. Nothing should surprise her or make her stop in her tracks anymore. And yet, there she was, standing behind a tree like a certain Hyuga girl, watching as 5 Narutos performed the stance she taught in perfect harmony. When they finished, the ground shook from the hammers coming down and 4 disappeared, leaving just the original Naruto, who sat down beside his hammer and leaned against it in a huff. Speaking out loud, he asked the wind, "Man, where the hell is she? I thought at least Guy would have taught her punctuality. Just because she's a girl doesn't mean she can come and go as she pleases." Now 10-10 had been admiring him from afar. He was certainly a catch and she was looking forward to lunch again, so that she could get those envious stares from other girls. But he had just insulted her, indirectly, and he wouldn't get away with that. Putting her mediocre genjutsu skills to work, she camouflaged herself and began to slink behind him. It only took a couple of minutes, but she soon stood right behind him, with a kunai drawn, ready to deliver her prank. She began to get worried when he began to sniff the air like an Inuzuka, but then he relaxed and she sprung her trap. Putting her arms around his shoulders and leaning on his back, she dispelled the genjutsu, while holding the kunai against his sensitive area. When she whispered in his ear, it sent shivers down his spine, but he maintained his cool the best he could. You know, Naruto, you shouldn't talk to yourself when no one's around. Someone might hear what you say and do what I could do right now. Now then, let's see how high-pitched your voice can get. Before she could even move, she found herself hoisted into the air and every one of her limbs splayed out. Turning her head this way and that, she found that both legs and arms were held by Naruto clones. She looked over her stomach and saw the original Naruto spinning her kunai on the end of his finger. Naruto, let me down. This isn't funny. You're right, 10-10, it wasn't funny. You threatened to lop off my little buddy and that wasn't funny. Tickling the shit out of you as punishment, however, that's going to be funny. You wouldn't dare. Watch me. He poked her in her stomach and she stifled the giggle, but when he began to tickle her all over she lost it and began to writhe and gasp for breath. She hated being powerless against something as trivial as this, but then again she was secretly enjoying herself. She hadn't had this much fun in a long time. Naruto finally stopped his ministrations and let her catch her breath, before helping her to her feet. She tried to glare at him but the smile on her face wouldn't go away. Okay asshole, just for that I'm showing you 2 additional stances today and I expect you to be able to do them flawlessly before lunch, which, I might add, you're treating me to yet again. That's not fair. I treated you yesterday. Why don't you pay for yourself? Because you're supposed to be a gentleman and I am a lady. Naruto muttered under his breath that that was debatable and earned himself a knock on the head that sent him face first into the ground. Luckily for 10-10, he didn't catch the grin on her face. Now then, you're going to pay for my lunch and that's that. Besides, only a few people have ever touched me outside of battle and lived. You should feel honored I haven't gutted you like a fish yet. Now get that overgrown mallet of yours and we'll get started. It's not a mallet, it's a hammer. It's going to be shoved up your ass sideways if you don't do as I say. Now get cracking. Bah, you can't even lift it to go through with that threat. Maybe, but I can shove this katana sideways. Now move. Eep. Yes ma'am. Unbeknownst to the two of them, Sanosuke sat in a tree off to the side, watching them with amusement. He had to resist the urge to chuckle at their antics and felt sorry for Naruto when he saw what the boy was going through at the moment. It was true, 10-10 was a slave driver. Ought to be young again and in love, he thought, even if they don't know it yet. 10-10 sat on the ground with her katana leaning against her shoulder, panting. She looked across the training grounds at her current partner and sighed in frustration. He had done the cat as perfectly after only a few times, and a couple of clubs upside the head from her, and the little punk was still going like he wasn't even winded. She huffed, and laid back on the ground. She trained for years with Guy Sensei and Lee, so why was it that Naruto, who trained with one of the laziest Junin out there, was such a fucking stamina freak? Even Lee would have passed out from exhaustion by now, mumbling in his sleep about the flames of youth. Feeling the thump of the hammer as it hit the ground, she looked up to see Naruto heading her way. 10-10 couldn't help but be impressed constantly by the boy's physique. He wasn't as ripped as Lee, but he didn't have the body of a genius either. Naruto was a very good compromise between the two. Not relying entirely on power but not entirely on jutsu either, he had the faint outline of a six-pack. The fact that he was shirtless, saying he didn't want to ruin his GI, and had sweat glistening off his body only made him that much more attractive to 10-10. She always appreciated a hard-working man. Maybe that's why she quit seeing Neji in a romantic light a while ago. He simply didn't work as hard as her or Lee. Sure, he trained but he didn't do it until he was exhausted. She wearily looked up at the blonde and saw his lips moving. She turned red when she realized she had been admiring his body instead of listening to him. Lucky for her, the idiot didn't notice. Go get something to eat? Hey 10-10, I asked if you want to get something to eat? Yeah that sounds great. Where are we going? I don't know. You're the guest, you decide. As long as it's not sushi again. Ah, spoil sport. Fine, let's see. No, maybe, I got it. Let's go to that barbecue joint that Choji frequents. What if Choji's there? You know they shut down when he comes in. Ten just shrugged and stood up. Then we'll readjust our plans. Now let's go. She took 2 steps and fell flat on her face. She hadn't realized that she had used up most of her energy teaching Naruto and helping him with his forms. Dodging that damn hammer was harder than it looked once he had a small sense of direction on what to do with it. Naruto, meanwhile, was freaking out over what to do. Ten, are you okay? I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to make you train me till you killed yourself. Please, come on, get up. Naruto, shut up. I'm not dead you idiot, I'm exhausted. You wore me out. Guess we won't be going to lunch. Naruto put on a big grin and swung his hammer to his back. After much cajoling he had convinced Sanosuke to make him a holder that could handle the strain of carrying the hammer, attached to his back. Ten looked at him with interest and suddenly found herself being picked up bridal style and adjusted against his chest. A quick, eep, from her and a soft knock against his skull, and she looked up to find those silver stars again. I'm not passing up lunch because you can't walk. I'll carry you there. We'll probably make better time with me carrying you than normal anyway. You saying I'm slow? No, I'm saying you're slower than me. Now shut up and enjoy the ride. Naruto took off, running as fast as he could. Ten slung her arms around his neck and decided to really enjoy the ride. He had put his GI back on and she buried her nose into his chest, inhaling his scent. It smelled different from every other guy's. It smelled of the forest and ramen, and yet it had another, underlying scent, one of danger and yet protectiveness. She found it intoxicating and found herself all too soon being sat down in a chair at the barbecue joint. The ride was over all too fast for her taste and she wondered if she could convince him to carry her again on the way back. It wasn't often that she got to act like a girl instead of a warrior and she rather liked the attention he lavished on her. He left momentarily to put his hammer outside and she ordered for him. I could really get used to this. Naruto, while carrying her, was also running a gamut of emotions. That tightening of the chest was back and having her in his arms felt comfortable and right, like she was meant to be there. He noticed that her body conformed to his almost perfectly and she was no burden at all to him. When she wasn't looking, had her face buried in his chest, he had leant down just a bit and sniffed her hair. It smelled like ten. He couldn't put it any other way, except that she had her own unique scent and no one else had it. It was comforting to him and pleasing. The run was too short for his taste also and he soon found himself lowering her into a chair and placing his hammer outside. He sighed on the way back in. Why couldn't all of his training sessions go as nice as these with Ten? Small talk kept them occupied until their food arrived and both teens ate in silence, though both of their minds were running full throttle. They were beginning to become more comfortable with one another little by little. It's been said that you know you've found someone special when you can shut the fuck up and enjoy comfortable silence with each other. The one who said that obviously never met Naruto though. He doesn't know how to shut the fuck up for long. So Ten, what's the deal with you and Neji? Did the two of you ever hook up? Ten was slightly taken aback by this. It was such a sudden question and very straightforward. Just like Naruto, she thought. There's nothing between us, Naruto. Neji and I are just two different people and it wouldn't have worked. Even now that he's a better person and not so cold, he's still a pompous jackass on occasion. I gave up on him long ago. I'm sorry to hear that. What about Lee and Guy? How have they been? Ten smiled when asked about her favorite teammate and her sensei. Guy sensei is all right. He's still as crazy as ever, but he's a good man at heart. Lee is your eternal rival Naruto. You should know how he is. Hee, well that's true. I haven't seen Lee lately though, since every time I come off a mission, I'm right back out in a few days. I've been focusing all my energy on getting Sasuke back, but I'm starting to rethink my actions on that. Ten raised an eyebrow at that. Ever since Sasuke turned traitor, all Naruto had talked about was rescuing him. Now here he was saying he was re-evaluating that situation. Will wonders never cease? So what are you rethinking, Naruto? The approach to rescuing him or whether or not he wants to be rescues? Rescuing him at all? Well, that was a big surprise. Sasuke was an obsession to Naruto and to rethink anything about him was like moving a mountain. Ten's response was intelligent and well thought out. Do what? I'm not worried about rescuing him anymore. If I bring him back, if I see him again, he's a dead man. I'll kill him 10-10. I really will. He'll get no mercy from me. He'll get my pity, yes, but never my mercy. Not anymore. But Naruto, Sasuke was like a brother to you. You've said so yourself. How can you kill him? Because there comes a time when even brotherhood cannot stand in the way of ideals. Sasuke chose to break the ideals of the village in exchange for power he could have gotten here. We're on opposite sides of a war now, and whatever brotherly feelings I might have shared with him are gone now. But what about your promise to Sakura? A slow smile crossed Naruto's face, becoming something more of a maniacal grin, slightly scaring 10-10. That's the beauty of promises 10-10. I only promised to bring Sasuke back to her. I never promised to bring him back alive. Besides that, I have to retrieve a tainted soul for Kami, and after that weird dream I had the other night, I have a certain idea of who it is. What dream are you talking about, Naruto? He told her about the dream and the way he saw Sasuke in the dream and the weird figure standing in his shadow who had to be Orochimaru. 10-10's eyes widened the more he described it in detail. So you're really going to kill him? That's very, well, frankly it's disturbing, Naruto. We all grew up with Sasuke. You were part of the Rookie 9 with him. How can you grow up with someone and then want to kill them? Naruto's visage turned dark, and for a moment 10-10 saw him in a different light. He was a 16-year-old boy who had seen death more times than he wanted, had been betrayed more than anyone else, and had had his heart crushed constantly by those he loved. For that brief moment she saw him as the angel of death. And then he spoke. Tell me 10-10, what do we do with ninja who leave the village without permission? We brand them Nuke Nin and send out the Hunter Nin. Sasuke is a traitor and traitors deserve death. Plain and simple. No strings attached. That's brutal, Naruto. But, I also have to admit that it's very true. Sasuke shouldn't get preferential treatment because of who he is. But how are you going to explain this to Sakura? I'm not. She'll either accept it or she won't. Not my problem. Sakura is my teammate, but I can't let that get in the way of justice. 10-10 cut her eyes around the restaurant and noticed that many had stopped eating and were listening intently to her and Naruto's conversation. She shifted uncomfortably in her chair and Naruto noticed this. He too cut his eyes around and decided it was time to move this conversation to more comfortable locales. He strode across the room, paid the bill, and scooped 10-10 up again before walking outside. She turned bright red when he scooped her up but didn't put up a fight. He didn't even swing his hammer to his back, just told her to hold onto his neck while he shifted an arm under her butt and they took off. Back at the training grounds, 10-10 was sat down against a tree and Naruto sat in front of her, leaning against his hammer. The mood from the restaurant was kind of ruined and they were looking to strike back up the conversation. 10-10, desperate to end the silence, just blurted out the first thing she could think. Why did you make that promise to Sakura? She watched as Naruto seemed to disappear into himself, but his eyes remained open and the stars in his eyes took on an ethereal glow. She was about to shake him to see if he'd fallen asleep when the light in his eyes came back and he looked at her with a small smile. 10-10, I made that promise because I wanted her to be happy. Or at least that's why I thought I made it. Sanosuke told me earlier that my need to fulfill promises comes from the demon in me, that it was one of his noble traits. All these years, I thought it was me just being a nice guy, and here I find it's the demon influencing me. But it's a noble trait, right? So why is something noble bad? Sasuke's Avenger thing is supposed to be noble. Seppuku is supposed to be noble. Making promises with the intent that you get something out of it isn't noble. I don't consider any of the other noble reasons all that noble either. But Naruto, you've never been malicious about anything. And I've heard you make promises before. You never ask for anything out of them. You make them because you're a good person and you want people to be happy. Besides, I happen to like that quality about you. You're an honest person. While Naruto was gaping at her, 10-10 was thinking to herself. She wondered why she said that when she could hardly say she knew Naruto. But there was an underlying want to know him. That irrational need to get to know him. She was starting to see the boy in a whole new light and she was liking what she saw. She was startled out of her thoughts by Naruto's small voice. Do you really mean that, 10-10? I've never had anyone say that to me before. Of course I meant it. It's one of your endearing qualities, Naruto. I think my strength is back now. We can continue this conversation later. Let's get back to training. By the end of the day, with the help of 10-10 and a crap load of cage bunchins, Naruto knew a whole style and only needed repetition to gain mastery of it. Tenten was once again in awe of the boy and his ability to learn. She asked him to teach her the Kage Bunshin and he acquiesced, but she couldn't make more than 2 at a time. She was about to go into a full-blown pout, when Lee came over the horizon, waving like a maniac. Ten, we must go to meet Guy-sensei. He has got an USA mission to protect a nobleman and has said it will improve our flames of youth tenfold. Oh hello, Naruto. How have you been? Pretty good, Lee. Next time I see you I expect a spar, okay? Yosh, Naruto. I will most definitely find you when we return for our spar. Train my friend so that our flames of youth will burn brightly. Sure thing, Lee. Ten, thanks for all your help. I'll continue training in this style until I have it mastered. I guess I'll see you later. Take care. Naruto began to walk away with his hammer on his shoulder, thinking that his training with Ten was over. It saddened him greatly, the thought did, but he couldn't figure it out. Ten watched his back, the same feeling running through her, before shouting his name, making him stop, and jogging over to him. Look Naruto, I enjoyed myself these past couple of days. I really did. When I get back, if you're here, would you like to continue our training? Really? You mean it? Hell yeah, I want to continue this. Good. I want you to continue working that style, got it? Oh, and Naruto? Yeah? I want you to promise me something. Naruto looked at her with wide eyes. Hadn't they just talked about promises and him? Before he could go any deeper into thought, she was beside him, whispering in his ear, with a wide grin on her face. I want you to promise me that when I get back, you'll take me on a date. A real date. No ramen, no training clothes, just you, me, and a nice restaurant. What do you say? Would you like that? Naruto just nodded dumbly, his eyes wide. Lee looked on, intrigued, since he couldn't hear the conversation. He was shocked when Ten leaned in and pecked Naruto on the cheek, turning the boy blood red before she bounded off and grabbed Lee's arm, pulling him along in shock and confusion. Ten had never been that forward before with any boy, and Lee's mind was running a mile a minute to decipher what it meant. Being innocent, gullible Lee, however, he just couldn't grasp any reason. In matters of the heart, Lee was almost as, if not more clueless than Naruto. Ten offered no answers however, and they left off for their mission. Naruto was stunned to say the least. He had a pretty trainer, who was willing to show him things. She was more patient with him than anyone since Iruka, and she had just asked him out on a date. He'd never been on a date before. What did people do on dates? He'd have to ask Iruka about that. In the meantime, he might as well go back to mastering her style. He created 100 Kage Bunshins and they all got to work. He'd ponder on this later tonight. Unbeknownst to him, Sanosuke sat in a tree, watching and hearing everything. He disappeared without a sound, reappearing in Tenten's living room. He could hear her packing and stomped on the floor to let her know he was there. Her answer was to hurtle 2 kunai, which lodged in his chest. He frowned and pulled the kunai out, handing them to a mildly pissed Tenten. He rubbed his chest and fingered the holes in his robe again. You know, Naruto put these exact same holes in my shirt that you did. You two definitely are 2 of a kind. So, did you figure out the riddle? I did. I'm not sure that Naruto has. After he told me that story, especially the part about his soulmate teaching him Kenjutsu, I pieced it together. When he explained the dream, I knew it was me. Tell me Sanosuke, how can he be that dense about things? Is he really that dumb? It's not that he's dumb, Tenten. He just believes, deep down, that he doesn't deserve such a thing as love. Not from a girl and not in the sense of a lover. His sense of self-worth is very low from earlier in his life. But you can change all that. You can be what he's always needed. Ten took all this in while she continued packing. What do you think about his view on Sasuke? Is he right, Sanosuke? Are there some souls that are too far gone as to not be worth saving? No, souls are always worth saving. But there are still rules that mortals must follow so that there will be no blemishes on their souls. Loyalty, honor, respect, trust, love. These are things that must be followed. If someone is your master, you must do as they say, without question. To go against your master, unless with due cause, shows that you have none of the noble qualities and therefore you forfeit your right to have a say whether you live or die. Sasuke is not the soul Naruto must purge, but he may be caught in the crossfire. It is inevitable. Orochimaru, thought Ten, So what can we do to ensure that Naruto doesn't kill Sasuke if he's innocent? Sanosuke's face darkened and for a second, Tenten was reminded of Naruto. Sasuke is not innocent. He chose to go and follow a darker path for power. Avenging your family at the cost of your own life is not something that is noble. It is foolhardy. Naruto is correct. Sasuke cannot be forgiven for his crimes. It is a shame that one such as Naruto may have to stain his hands with the blood of one he considered friend, but in the shinobi world, such things must come to pass. What is my role in all this? Whatever you choose, Tenten. Your role is what you make of it. Unlike your friend Neji thinks, there is no such thing as fate. It is a crutch that the weak hide behind when they cannot change anything. All I ask is that you be yourself and try to help him. Tenten turned around and smiled at Sanosuke. I'll do one better. No matter what life brings at us, I'll stand by him. I'm going to make him work for me. I won't just stand by him because we are bound at the soul. That's why I told him we're going on a date, because I don't want him to think I'm just going to be with him because Kami said so. He wants me, he has to show me he wants me. I think Kami will like you, Tenten. I know I do. Make Naruto sweat a little bit before the two of you get serious. You'll appreciate it more later in life. Her smile turned into a sadistic grin. Who says I'm going to make him stop sweating ever? I like the little dunce, but if he's going to be with me forever, I want him on his toes all the time. I don't want a boring soulmate. I want him to challenge me as well. And with Naruto and that mouth of his, I know I'll never be bored and I'll never have to worry about being cheated on because he's so fiercely loyal. TCH, listen to me. I'm starting to sound like he's caught me already. More than you'll ever know. Thought Sanosuke. Ah crap, I'm gonna be late. Bye Sanosuke. Tell Kami I said hi. She was out the door like a shot and Sanosuke disappeared. He appeared in front of Kami and knelt. So what do you think of her, Kami-sama? She is an interesting girl. She'll definitely keep that knucklehead in line. And when they both come here, I'll have two fine angels to serve me, as you have. Do you think Naruto will be alright with his path? Will it darken his soul? Kami turned and put her gaze on Sanosuke. It wasn't often she focused on any one thing and now all her attention was on him. I think he will do what is right. He will do what I asked, nothing more. Naruto is not a vengeful person, but he does know right and wrong. He will be fine. His village will accept him for who he is, and when he receives his final gift, it will make him all the more loved. Was it wise to have me tell him about the demon like that? It served its purpose. It made him stop and think about that ridiculous promise he made to Haruno Sakura all those years ago. A promise is fine, but one shouldn't have to be killed over something so childish. Mortals all make their own path in life. Naruto has chosen a path of light, Sasuke chose one of darkness. The two must combat each other to see which prevails, and in the end, we will see who had the most conviction. My soldier or the tainted one's vessel. The whole week that Tenten was gone, Naruto did nothing but train and meditate. He didn't seek out Sakura nor did he try to find Kakashi. This disturbing lack of regular annoyance is what led the two on a village-wide search for the blonde. They found him at their regular training field, rearranging the landscape while using his finally mastered style taught to him by Tenten, the dance of the swirling pool. It worked well with Naruto's hammer as it used a lot of misdirection and downward strikes. He twirled the massive chunk of metal around his body, thrusting it forward, using the spike to make his imaginary opponent jump back before pivoting on his heel and swinging the hammer up and over in a crescent moon swipe. He brought the hammer back down after a twirling figure eight and dropped it in front of him with both hands on the end of the handle. Sakura and Kakashi stood spellbound, while their teammate danced, oblivious to them. Sakura was the first to shake off her stupor and marched forward to get his attention. When she tapped him on the shoulder, she found herself face to face with the business end of his hammer. Fear was quickly overcome by anger as she responded in her usual way. "You idiot, watch where the hell you're pointing that overgrown mallet." When she went to punch him in the head, however, all she hit was thin air and she stumbled, nearly falling. Looking around, she saw him standing sideways on a nearby tree, his hammer on his shoulder. "Nay, that wasn't nice, Sakura-chan. You shouldn't sneak up on people and then accuse them of things." "I'll do more than accuse you, you idiot. I heard from Tsunade Shisho that you found a new toy. Kakashi-sensei, and I came to see what it was." "Where did you get that?" "Kami." That made both Kakashi and Sakura stop. After a moment of silence, Sakura burst out laughing and Kakashi's eye crinkled up into a smile. Naruto, on the other hand, had the same unreadable expression on his face that he'd had since they arrived. Kakashi decided that he wanted a real answer. Okay Naruto, where did you really get it? Kami gave it to me. It's a holy hammer. Only I can wield it. He heard Sakura snort, for some reason that pissed him off more than usual. Ten hadn't scoffed at him when he told her. He scowled and held the hammer out. Okay then Miss Medic Nen. You're the stronger of the two of us, correct? Then lift up this hammer from the ground. Use whatever means necessary and then I'll show you up by lifting it with one hand. He dropped the hammer and it landed with a loud boom, and their eyes flew wide. Sakura looked from Naruto to the hammer and back again, but put her smirk back on and reached for the weapon. No matter how hard she pulled, tugged, cursed, screamed, or pumped chakra into her arms, she couldn't budge it. She huffed in annoyance and crossed her arms over her chest. Think you're so smart, huh? Smirking like you can take on the world. Why don't you lift the damn thing then? Sakura, you've seen me lift it. You saw me use it. I don't need to prove anything, but if you insist. As soon as he picked up his hammer, Kakashi was upon him, throwing a kunai at his head. Naruto dropped his hammer to the ground and placing his right palm on the end of the handle, maneuvered it to block the kunai. As soon as the clang was heard, Kakashi rushed him and his eye opened wide when, instead of going in blindly, Naruto stood calm and collected, as if analyzing the situation. When Kakashi was with 6 paces, he tapped the side of the hammer with his left hand and spun it around, taking a swipe at Kakashi, who dodged with a back flip. Kakashi re-evaluated the situation, watching as Naruto stood ready, his left foot in front, his right arm extend, palm open, his hammer behind in a tight grip. The boy had gotten better, that was a definite. His stance was solid and if Kakashi didn't know better, he'd think that Naruto had gotten smarter? More tactile? Perhaps it was just the way he carried himself. It was annoying. Usually he could read Naruto like an open book, but now he was guarded and that stance left too much to the imagination. Deciding that he didn't want to risk anything, he lifted his Hite-8, exposing the Sharingan. To his surprise, Naruto didn't flinch. It was like the boy had experience beyond his years. Tell me Kakashi-sensei, who besides Guy, has the most experience dealing with the Sharingan? Kakashi was taken aback by this but quickly regained his composure. It wouldn't do for his subordinates to think that they could surprise him that easily. I don't know Naruto. Why don't you enlighten me? It's me Kakashi-sensei. I have the most experience in fighting the Sharingan. And I can tell you right now that that eye of yours is no match for my stamina or strength. I'm tired of being pushed around and I have the resolve to go through with what I must do. And what is that Naruto? Bring back Sasuke. Kakashi and Sakura smiled and nodded their heads, until he spoke again. Dead or alive, Ten had just returned from her mission, and while it had been successful, she wanted nothing more than to see Naruto again. She was ready to train with him again, and was more than ready for her date. She was not ready, however, to see a very red-faced Sakura screaming at a stoic Naruto. Nor was she prepared to see Kakashi with his headband up and his Sharingan spinning angrily. Deciding that discretion was the better part of valor, she suppressed her chakra and hid behind a tree, listening to the ensuing argument. What the hell do you mean, dead or alive, Naruto? Sasuke has to come back alive. You promised me that we'd bring him back. I promised you that I'd bring him back, Sakura. I never agreed to help you bring him back. And I never promised to bring him back alive. I've made a decision that I will no longer actively seek Sasuke. If I come across him, all the better, but I have other things that require my attention, more important things. What could be more important than getting our friend back, Naruto? Divine justice. My work as the right hand of Kami. Sakura stared at him in disbelief, and then set her jaw. Listen to you, Naruto. You sound like a self-important jackass. Divine justice? Right hand of Kami? For Kami's sake, Naruto, you sound like Sasuke. You sound like Sasuke, Naruto. That's not you. Don't presume to know me, Kakashi. You might be my sensei, but that is in word only. You have never been a sensei to me. Your pet project ran off and you gave him the tools to do it. Now it's my job to pick up the mess. I have a task given to me by Kami, and if Sasuke happens to get in my way, I will not hesitate to take him down. I'm tired of having to heal Chidori holes in my chest. This isn't right, Naruto. You can't go back on a promise. You're right, Sakura. I can't go back on a promise. That's my way. But other people seem to have no problem breaking promises to me, so I shall no longer give my word to those who I deem unfit to have it. He suddenly lifted his nose and sniffed the air. That was a familiar scent and it made him smile. He turned back to his still stunned teammates and gave them a curt bow. If you'll excuse me, my Kenjutsu trainer is here again and I must get back to training. I have much to learn from her and the more I dally, the more upset she will be. Good day. They watched as he walked off into the forest and Kakashi slid his headband back down over his eye. Kakashi-sensei, when did Naruto get such an extensive vocabulary? And why is he acting like this? I believe that something happened to him between our last mission and his awakening, Sakura. Perhaps he had an epiphany. After all, every time we meet Sasuke, he tries to kill Naruto. I know, but that's because he's messed up because of the curse seal. He can't help it. Maybe. Or maybe Naruto doesn't believe that anymore. I think we should drop the subject around him for the time being. Let's go. I think we should talk to Hokage-sama about this. Ten was impressed with how Naruto handled himself. He had remained calm and collected, hadn't blown his top, and hadn't ripped their heads off, even if she really wanted to. As he went by her, she grabbed his arm and he gave her a small smile. Hello Ten. How was your mission? It was alright. We got back in record time. I saw that little exchange by the way. I'm sorry you had to see that. I hope you aren't upset with me. Why would I be upset with you? I agree with you. Well, that's a surprise. Seems the day is full of them. Thought Naruto. So Naruto, are you ready for our date? Yeah, about that. I've never been on a date before. What do we do? You've never been on a date before? Geez Naruto, what have you been doing all your life? Ten, I don't mean to spoil your teasing, but think for a second who you're talking to. Who would date me knowing what I am? She reflected on this and found the logic sound. Really, who would date the holder of the Kyuubi? A wry smile crossed her face and she made her move. I would. He just looked at her slack-jawed. Really? You mean it? Of course I mean it. Why do you think I asked you in the first place? I don't know. Sigh, because I like you. You're a funny guy. You're interesting. And you're cute to boot. I get a lot of jealous looks when I'm with you. Naruto just stood there, his brain overloading. Now then, go home and get ready. Dress nice and come prepared to knock my socks off. Think casual, but formal. Show me a good time. Make me feel special. I'll help you along, but it's up to you to make me feel like I don't want the night to end. Now get going. Naruto merely nodded dumbly and walked off, his hammer dragging behind him. Ten giggled and sped off to her apartment to get ready herself. She wanted to look gorgeous for tonight. If all goes as planned, we'll both be turning heads. Hee, tonight is going to be perfect. As Naruto shuffled along the road to his apartment, he wondered to himself about what to do on a date. Sure, he had asked Sakura on tons of dates, but never once had he actually thought about what to do on one. He wasn't exactly a social butterfly, not that that was his fault entirely. He didn't have a clue what to do. The only thing he could think of was to talk to Iruka and hope his old sensei had some practical advice. Nodding to himself in silent agreement, he shouldered the hammer and took off to find Iruka. Iruka sat in his house, dozing on the couch, with a book on his face. It was one of his rare days off and he wanted to spend it in total solitude. He had put up barriers around his house and had even gone so far as to set up traps to deter any would-be visitors. He had forgotten, though, that Naruto's superior luck and insurmountable stupidity and bullheadedness were enough to go right through anything he had. His eyes cracked open when he heard the first boom of an exploding note and groaned when he heard the cacophony of expletives and shouts of rage from his favorite student. Okay, that wasn't good. I just need to avoid any more. Oh come on. What the fuck is, aw man, I really like this shirt, goddammit. I'm going to kill Iruka-sensei when I find him. Iruka sighed audibly and got up to let the golden-haired boy in. He suppressed a snicker when he saw the sight of a smoldering Naruto, who had lost his shirt in the explosion, and the slightly singed hair that was already growing back in. Iruka took in the boy and finally noticed the hammer when Naruto set it down with a loud thump, pushing past the scarred man to wash his face of the soot. Iruka offered a snort at Naruto's actions, eliciting a growl from the Jinchuriki. Naruto had only meant to come to ask a few simple questions, not be put through the ringer because of Iruka's explosive notes. His good mood had soured, and the only thing that kept him from a full-blown tantrum was that he had to pick up 10-10 for dinner later. He didn't have any time to waste on trivial things. Finishing cleaning up, he turned back to his former sensei and coughed into his hand. "I'm sorry for interrupting whatever you were doing, Iruka-sensei, but I need a bit of advice and I couldn't think of anyone but you to come to." Iruka grinned when he heard that. It wasn't often anymore that he could actually be of help to Naruto, so this was a rare treat indeed. It was almost worth the boy having crashed his off day. "Oh really? Well, I'll do my best to help any way I can." "What did you need from me?" "Advice on dating." If Iruka could have possibly looked any more dumbfounded, he would have. You want advice on dating? Oh ho, finally got Sakura to break down, huh?" "No, it isn't Sakura." "Hinata then? She always had a thing for you, I believe." "No, it isn't Hinata. And she had a thing for me?" "Huh, I never knew, but no, not Hinata either." "Ino? Hell no. She's way too bossy." "And Sakura wasn't?" "Well, that's pretty much the gamut of your classmates I know, Naruto. You never had much interaction with the other girls of the class." "It's not one of my classmates." "Oh, then who is she? An underclassman?" Naruto sighed and rolled his eyes. He didn't have time for 20 questions. "It's 10-10 Iruka-sensei. I have a date with 10-10. 10-10? The weapons-obsessed girl? With buns in her hair? That's the one. How in the hell did you end up with her?" Naruto shrugged and offered a grin. "Ask and Kami shall provide." Iruka sighed and sagged his shoulders. Dealing with Naruto was never boring, but in the end he always wondered if it was worth it. "I don't want to know, and out of curiosity, where in the hell did you get that hammer?" "Kami provided it." "Okay, how about those stars in your eyes?" "Kami provided it." "Right, gotcha. Look, Naruto, if you don't want to tell me the truth, just say you don't want to tell me, okay?" "But I am telling you the truth." "Look, sensei, I have to go get ready, but I promise I'll tell you all about how I got everything later." "I promise." "Fine, I'll see you later then. Oh, and watch out for the other traps." His response was another boom and a scream of fury, making him grin before laying back down. It's never boring with Naruto around, he thought with a chuckle. Naruto finally made it home in one piece, although the looks he got from the girls of the village made him uneasy. It was like they'd never seen a shirtless guy before. He didn't think of himself as anything special, so he couldn't really grasp the concept that he had grown quite handsome over the years. He stepped inside and made the preparations for his date, wondering how in the hell he was going to do it since Iruka didn't really give him any advice. Naruto had gotten fed up from all the questions and left hastily. Oh well, he was used to flying by the seat of his pants. What should make this time any different? He finished getting dressed in the one semi-formal outfit that Sanosuke had gotten him and left his hammer on the walk outside. He wouldn't need it tonight. 10-10 was in a frenzy as she thought about what to wear. She wasn't like most girls, who wore kimonos to look good. 10-10 liked her Chinese-style outfits and went to great lengths to stay true to her looks. Her hair was always pulled into the buns and she forsook makeup, saying it was too much trouble most of the time. The most she ever did was put on some lipstick. Thinking that her Chinese shirt and pants wouldn't cut it tonight, she pulled out the big gun. A green Chinese-style dress, slit high up the side, with gold trim was her weapon of choice. If this didn't get a reaction out of the little dunce, then nothing would. She heard the knock coming from the door and hurried down to open it. The sight before her erased any doubts from her mind on whether or not she wanted to be seen with him. Naruto wasn't used to playing dress-up normally. Hell, one could even say he abhorred it. He just wasn't comfortable in anything except training clothes. But tonight, he'd make an exception for 10-10. She had been kind enough to train him and had been patient enough to put up with him. To top it all off, she was a certified bombshell and he couldn't deny that she was beautiful in a deadly way. In his eyes, even if he didn't acknowledge it yet, soon, but not yet, she was about as close to perfection as you could get. That's why when she opened the door his jaw dropped and nearly got stepped on. Before him was a verifiable goddess in Chinese clothing. Everything about her screamed, "Why?" and Naruto was listening intently. 10-10, meanwhile, was drinking up the young man in front of her with her eyes. When she had told him to think casual, but formal, she hadn't thought he'd take it to heart. Wearing a pair of khaki pants with brown leather shoes and a black silk shirt with Tsunade's necklace on the outside, he looked very, very handsome. She laughed evilly in her mind. She'd be the envy of several women tonight, oh yes indeed. With one last appraising look, she beckoned him inside and directed him to the couch while she went upstairs and performed some last-minute touch-ups. Wearing a mischievous grin, she bolted up the stairs to find her heels and get the date underway. She hadn't been this excited in a long time. Naruto sat and took in his surroundings. Tenten's place was simple and clean, exactly how he thought it would be. Simple because she hardly had any personal effects lying around with the exception of some photos of her team. She had no family, so she had no heirlooms or anything of the such. Clean because the girl was meticulous in everything she did. Whether it be dusting or polishing a kunai, Tenten was a stickler for cleanliness. If we ever get more involved, I'll have to be certain to pick up more after myself. In fact, if it weren't for the weapons adorning every wall in the house, he would have thought she owned nothing at all beyond a couch and bed. Scrolls were rolled and neatly stacked in a corner, waiting to be filled with various pointy objects of death. Naruto leaned back in his seat and pulled one leg over the other so that his left ankle rested on his right knee, and thought about everything he knew about Tenten. He knew that Tenten was a kind person, unless you pissed her off. He knew she was a weapons master and could do anything she wanted with something that was pointy. When she had a kunai, she could be as sadistic as Anko. When she was weaponless, she could be as shy as Hinata. Weapons gave her confidence, and since she was never without a weapon 99 of the time, her confidence in herself was always through the roof. Her clothes nowadays weren't far off from her clothes when they were little, but they were a bit more suggestive and mature. Their time spent together outside of battle was spent trolling through the weapon shed trying to find things she could fix or make into something better. It was a fun hobby, but they didn't usually speak about anything except their missions and their teammates. Naruto frowned at how little he knew about Tenten. He'd have to remedy that, starting tonight. Tenten, meanwhile, was humming happily to herself. She had done the obligatory, make the guy wait pointlessly, gig to A.T., and now was ready to go. In actuality, she was ready to go the minute he walked in and only had to slip on her heels, but she decided to make him sweat a bit. After all, tonight was her night, as well as his. She was going out with one of the best-looking boys in Konoha and the one who was decidedly the most exotic-looking. Screw Sai and his Sasuke-ish looks, she'd take Naruto's wild, untamed look any day. It suited her better. She patted her hair and looked into the mirror one last time and gave herself an approving nod. Slipping her heels on, she began her slow trek downstairs to what she hoped was an eventful evening. She stopped when she got to the bottom of the stairs and slipped quietly to the corner of the wall and looked into her living room. A small smile crossed her face when she saw Naruto sitting with his legs crossed, a pensive look on his face. He looked to be deep in thought, and no matter what anyone else thought, she thought the look suited him. He sat still as could be, a contradiction she was never able to explain, while tapping a finger on his left knee. She didn't know it, but he was thinking about her. However, at the moment, her playful nature was getting the best of her and she decided to have a little fun with her date. Slipping a tanto off the wall, she slid behind the couch and put the knife to Naruto's neck, bending his head back. "You know, you kept me waiting longer than you should have. Perhaps I should alleviate some stress by shaving a few of your neck hairs." Naruto's only response was to smirk and push his neck into the blade, causing Tenten's eyes to widen and her to screech, when suddenly he burst into smoke. She looked frantically around until she heard a snicker from behind and whipped around to find Naruto standing on the wall sideways. He flashed her a foxy grin and flipped over her head, landing nimbly on his feet before being knocked to the floor by an irate Tenten. Tenten was furious. Not only had her little joke backfired, but the notorious prankster had one-upped her and come out on top. While the poor boy was recovering from head trauma and Tenten was taking deep breaths to calm herself down, her mind was racing. Damn, that was actually pretty good. He coweramied with a clone that I didn't even see him make and stuck to the wall behind me without being seen. Yep, life will never be boring with him around. Alright, jackass, get off the ground and let's go. I'm hungry after all that physical exertion and I want to show off my date for the night. What did you say just now? Tenten blushed slightly when she thought about what she had just said. Luckily, the idiot hadn't caught the tail end of what she said and she got off scot-free. Straightening herself out quickly, she helped him stand and smiled sweetly while escorting him to the door, before locking it behind her. Turning to the now confused Jinchuriki, she looped her arm in his and urged him to walk forward. He complied and they marched off into the night, to begin their date. As they walked through the streets, Ten took the time in between their short bouts of conversation to take in the looks from the people around them. Most of the older crowd was either indifferent or livid that Naruto was escorting her around. She scowled at the thought that some people could still be so stupid even after all these years. Those thoughts were quickly erased when she cut her eyes to see Naruto's brilliant smile hadn't faltered in the least. While she was sure it was forced somewhat, the underlying message was that while they may hate him, they were all jealous of him and the beauty beside him and the small happiness they had at the moment. It was moments like these that Ten would look back upon in the future and they would bring a smile to her face. She looked around at the faces of the younger generation and noticed that most either had a smile on their face, seeing another young couple on the scene, or that they had jealous looks, either for her or Naruto. She knew she wasn't the most desirable kunoichi, but she had a certain appeal due to her tomboyish charm and affinity for sharp things. She was an enigma to most boys when really she was easy to figure out. She wanted someone to love her, for her, not what she could offer them. Naruto was that type of person. He took everything at face value, for better or worse, and loved a person for who they were. Everyone had faults, everyone had vices, and he knew that above all. She unconsciously tightened her grip on his arm as they continued on. Naruto's thoughts were somewhat muddled at the moment. On the one hand, he was enjoying the closeness that Ten offered, but on the other hand he was uncomfortable with the looks he was getting. The regular glares didn't bother him, he was used to those. It was the looks of jealousy and, was that lust? It was completely foreign to him and although not unwanted, he had no idea how to interpret that look. It was pleasant coming from the girls on the street, but for some reason he didn't understand. He'd take Ten's small smile above a lecherous grin any day of the week. Perhaps it was the fact that Ten actually could put up with him that made him like her. He'd probably never figure it out. Hey Ten? Where are we eating it tonight? I thought you knew already. Nope, that's why I was asking. Ten sighed. She had forgotten to tell him where she wanted to eat. It was her fault, kinda, but she wouldn't let him know that. You're supposed to know where I want to eat, dummy. But I'll forgive you this time. We're going back to the sushi restaurant and we're going to have a lot of fun, with a good conversation. Then, on the way home, we're going to walk by the river and talk some more. After that, you're going to take me home, give me a hug, and wait until I shut the door before you leave. You've had a lot of time to plan this out, haven't you? Over a week. Is it too much to ask that I have fun on a date? No, but aren't you afraid I'll screw your perfect date up? She stopped in the street and gave him another one of her smiles that made him feel like the luckiest person in the world. Naruto, the only way you could have screwed up is if you wouldn't have shown up. Now keep walking, you're making me hungrier. The rest of the walk to the restaurant was uneventful until they ran into Ino and Sakura, who were out enjoying the evening and gossiping like there was no tomorrow. Naruto groaned inwardly at the thought of those two seeing him with Ten. He didn't care personally what other people thought about him, it's what they thought about Ten. Ten groaned out loud. Everything was going perfectly until those two harpies came on the scene. Now there probably would be a scene. And sure enough, Ino and Sakura spotted the couple and were immediately by their side. Ino had a large smile on her face, while Sakura was just a tad curious as to why they were dressed up. Ino started the ball rolling. Well, hello you two. What are the two of you doing out on this fine evening? Naruto looked at Ten and gave her a small nod, letting her know that she should do all the explaining. Best thing he could do was keep his mouth shut as long as possible. We're going to dinner and then take a walk. Anything we can help you two with? We're already running a bit late. The underlying hint was, I don't want to talk so get the hell out of the way. But an Ino that smells gossip is an imperturbable Ino. I was just wondering why the two of you were all dressed up. You're not on a date, are you? Yes. Oh, I didn't think, wait, you are. Ooh, and how did you two meet? Ten sighed and decided that she should just get the interrogation over with now. She threw Naruto a quick glance and saw that he had schooled his features into an unreadable face. At least he's trying to be good at the moment. No telling how long that'll last though. Ino, we've known each other since the Chunin exams. Naruto and I have been training together for a little while now and I invited him out on a date. Sakura decided to make her presence known at that moment. True to form, she didn't really care what Naruto did, but he was her Naruto and Ten was an unknown at the moment. She didn't really like the idea of him dating other people, even if she didn't want him. A girl needs her backup after all. You invited him? Damn 10-10, I didn't know you were that desperate for a date. Why Naruto and not Neji? He's a lot hotter than Naruto. 10-10 and Naruto both scowled at that little comment. Naruto was very conscious of his looks and didn't like to be reminded of how different he was from everyone else. With blonde hair, blue eyes, and whisker marks, he was already an oddity, and he didn't need to be reminded of that. 10-10 was pissed because she was beginning to like Naruto for the exact reasons that he wasn't Neji. Naruto was open and honest, carefree and childlike, fun and exotic. Guys like Neji were hot in the boring, cookie-cutter, black hair, foul mood, and I don't care what you think because I'm better than you way. Personality counted for a lot in 10-10's book, and Naruto had that in spades. She cut her eyes one more time to Naruto and saw that his mouth was slightly open and she could actually see the fangs, lengthening. His whisker marks were also deepening slightly. She decided to end this conversation quickly before Sakura got mauled. Well, I hate to end this lovely conversation, but we need to be going. We'll see you guys later. Come on Naruto, I'm hungry. Yes ma'am. Tugging on the blonde's arm, they walked briskly past the two girls, and Ino shuddered when she felt the cool breeze as they walked by. Feeling that she hadn't gotten in the teasing she wanted, she turned to Sakura in a huff. Now why the hell did you go and say that, forehead? I still wanted to talk to them. Ah, no harm done. Besides, I'm pretty sure that Naruto begged 10-10 to go out with him, not the other way around. 10-10 has higher standards than that. You know Sakura, I don't see your reasoning. Just because you don't see Naruto as boyfriend material doesn't mean others don't. He's actually pretty hot. There aren't any other guys like him in the village, and most of the civilian girls look at him and blush. Just because you're hung up on one guy doesn't mean the rest of us can't shop around. I know that, but why Naruto? Nobody ever looked at him before. It's because he grew up, Sakura. He's not the idiot anymore. He's not stupid, and I'm pretty sure he never was. He just acts that way now because that's his personality. He wants others happy, so he acts like a clown. 10-10's just lucky she got to him before I did. Who knows? In another world, maybe we could have been something. They continued walking on, and Sakura chewed on what she had been told. Naruto, hot? Nah? 10-10 sighed happily as Naruto held her chair out for her. He had been a perfect gentleman so far, and her expectations of this date were being surpassed quickly. Naruto thanked Jiraiya in the back of his mind for all the lessons on manners that he beat into his head against his will. He'd be lost without that old pervert's training. Taking his seat across from her, they placed their drink orders and waited for them to arrive. Naruto decided to strike up a conversation to break the quiet. Thanks for getting me out of there, 10-10. I don't think I could have stood the subtle jabs another second. 10-10 giggled and smiled at him. No problem. I saw that you were becoming agitated with Sakura, so I decided that we had better leave. How did you know that I was agitated? Your fangs and whiskers were changing. Oh, yeah. Silence reigned again, and thankfully the clunk of the drinks hitting the table broke it. The two young ninja placed their orders and sat back again to silence. Why was it so hard to talk to one another now? Maybe it was the realization setting in that they were on a date. Desperate to say something, anything, Naruto blurted out the first thing on his mind. You look beautiful tonight, 10-10. That dress really suits you. 10-10 smirked at that and decided to have a little fun with him. Just tonight? I'm hurt, Naruto. Poor Naruto, simpleton that he is, thought he had hurt her feelings. No, I didn't mean it like that. I just meant you look especially beautiful tonight. Normally your beauty radiates above all others, but tonight you look like a goddess. Even if she knew that he was laying it on a little thick, 10-10 couldn't help but blush. After all, it wasn't every day that she got compliments like that. Well, thank you, Naruto. You don't look bad yourself. I like that outfit, it makes you look distinguished. Hey, thanks. So tell me, why did you want to go out with me tonight? I thought I told you already. I like you. You're a nice guy, and I thought you might be fun to keep around. Like for eternity. Can't believe he hasn't figured it out yet. Oh, well, I'm flattered. Truly I am. I just can't tell you how lucky I am. I've never been on a date before, and to go on one with a girl like you is a real treat. What do you mean, a girl like me? You know, one who treats me like a normal person, instead of a plague or a burden. It's nice to be treated like a human being for once. I guess, your being cute is just icing on the cake. I like your personality best. It's something I could get used to. Really? Well, thank you, Naruto. I just wish we'd done this sooner. It's nice having someone around who can act normal, instead of a cold jackass or a living megaphone. You shouldn't talk about your teammates like that, 10-10. They're nice guys on their own, especially Lee. I know, but you don't have to be around them all the time. Just be thankful you don't have to be on Team 7. Sigh, I really don't know why I stay sometimes. Is it really that bad? At times, yeah. I feel like the odd man out at times. I was trained by a Sannin, for heaven's sake. Why do I always feel so weak and helpless? I know I can beat Sasuke. I practically could have killed him when we fought at the Valley of the End. But now it seems like there's an insurmountable gap between us. I can't seem to beat him. You're still holding back. Do what? You're still holding back. You didn't want to kill him last time you fought, so you held back. He's not holding back, and therefore he'll beat you every time. But I heard your speech today, Naruto, and I agree with you. You can't afford to hold back anymore. Too many people depend on you and not Sasuke. I'd be sad if you got yourself killed. Now that took Naruto aback. For some reason, an unhappy 10-10 didn't sit well with him. He was beginning to like that smile of hers, and a frown on her face because of him was a failure on his part. He reached across the table and put his hand over hers, while giving her a large foxy grin. Don't worry, 10-10, I'm not going anywhere. Besides, after the first date comes the second, right? I can't go before we at least get a second date. You're right, I'd like that. And next date is all up to you to decide. Food's here. The rest of dinner was spent in idle chit-chat, learning a bit about each other, and the sound of 10-10 happily consuming sushi. Naruto remained somewhat moderate. He wasn't fond of sushi, and besides, he had to pay for 10-10's meal. Poor Gamma-chan, he'd be so flat until his next mission. Once they were finished, he paid for the meal, tears pouring down his face while 10-10 rubbed her full tummy, and they began their trek to the river. The moonlight was as perfect as it could get and reflected off the surface of the water and onto the couple's faces. The pale light seemed to give Naruto's silver stars an otherworldly glow that 10-10 could not tear herself away from, while her pale skin seemed to shine with luminescence that Naruto found heavenly. In a way, she reminded him of his vision of Kami, happy, sure of herself, and wise. She was perfect. 10-10 just walked along happily, rubbing her full belly and leaning against Naruto. She found it hard to believe sometimes that the squirt who beat Neji was standing beside her like a rock. 10-10 wasn't small by any means, but Naruto could toss her around like she was a tennis ball. She sighed in contentment and closed her eyes. If this first date was a precursor to what the rest of her life was going to be like, then she would gladly accept the will of Kami. Even her own imagination had never treated her this romantically. After walking for a while though, she became tired and pulled Naruto over to a tree beside the water. Naruto, being the gentleman that he was, offered for her to sit on his lap so she wouldn't stain her dress. Being the simpleton that he is, he didn't see the significant meaning beside this, but 10-10 did. She did see the logic in it though. After all, it would be easier for him to replace a pair of pants than it would be for her to replace her favorite dress. While she made herself comfortable, with lots of wiggling around, Naruto was repeating his, "not a pervert," mantra in his head. Not that he minded 10-10 moving around, but it was becoming increasingly difficult to hide his arousal at having a beautiful girl in his lap. Finally, having grown exasperated with her constant ministrations, he grabbed her around the waist and held her against him while he watched the stars twinkle and felt the wind blow. Closing his eyes, he let out a deep breath and relaxed. 10-10 had been squirming on purpose, trying to get a reaction out of him. She had gotten the desired reaction but was amazed at the boy's level of resistance. It was like he had an iron wall of resolve around his UAL frustrations. One would think that traveling with a pervert would break down any walls he had against perversion, but the travels with Jiraiya only proved to strengthen them, albeit slightly. Somewhat put out that he was able to resist her, not that she would ever stop teasing him, she huffed and crossed her arms. Naruto, sensing her displeasure, leaned in and scrunched his eyes in that foxy manner. Did I do something wrong? If I did, I'm sorry. 10-10 realized how she was acting and immediately told him nothing was wrong. Sensing no lie, Naruto leaned back again and closed his eyes, enjoying the feeling of the breeze as it caressed his cheeks. The weapon's mistress looked back to her date's face and couldn't help but be entranced. With his eyes closed and at ease with the world, Naruto did indeed look like an innocent angel. She let out a happy sigh and leaned against his chest. She couldn't help but notice that he emitted a warmth from himself that was intoxicating. She felt happy and safe, and it wasn't long before sleep claimed her. Naruto had slipped into a light doze, but he never fully went to sleep. When he felt the rhythmic rise and fall of Tenten's chest against him, he looked down to find her asleep and snuggling into his shoulder. He smiled and scooped her into his arms. She felt so light, and when she burrowed her face further into his chest he couldn't help but laugh. A girl as deadly as herself, reduced to a mere child in his arms. Oh well, might as well enjoy it while it lasts. Not wanting the feeling he had to leave, he walked back to her apartment instead of running. Their date was over and Tenten had to come to terms with the reality that she couldn't sleep in Naruto's arms forever, no matter how comfortable it was. Yawning cutely, she began to shift around, letting him know she was awake. Naruto was almost to her house though and ignored her. She wiggled more, she wasn't paying attention to where they were, and he nearly dropped her. Tightening his grip and pulling her closer, he looked down and saw her brown eyes staring up at him. He chuckled and kept walking while she huffed and crossed her arms. I know you want down Tenten, but we're nearly to your house. Humor me and let me carry you like a gentleman. Besides, you didn't have any problems while you were sleeping. I was not. Oh, so those cute little snores weren't coming from you. She smacked his arm and looked away. Jackass. Ah, you like it. Silence fell until they reached her door and he set her down. Naruto stood there, not really knowing what to do, until Tenten wrapped her arms around his waist and gave him a hug. Thanks for tonight, Naruto. I had a lot of fun and we definitely need to do it again. Whenever you want, Tenten. Good night, Naruto. Before he could say anything, she leaned in and gave him a peck on the cheek, pivoted on her foot and locked the door before he could do anything. She didn't hear the small, good night, from the flustered boy, but she did hear his shout of joy from down the street. She went to sleep that night with a smile on her face. Life was definitely looking up for the bun-haired girl. Naruto was ecstatic as he bounded home, light as a feather. He ran up the stairs and ran through the door, screeching to a halt before he barreled into Sanosuke. He looked questioningly at the angel and received a smile that lit up the room. So Naruto, did you enjoy yourself tonight? Since you seem to know all about it already, why don't you tell me? Oh, smart are we? Well then, yes, I can tell you that you did enjoy yourself. Do you know why you were so comfortable with her? Because she's cute and nice to me? Sanosuke sighed and shook his head. The boy still wasn't quite there yet. He looked back to Naruto and gave him a grin. Don't worry boy, you'll get it one day. I'll see you later. I have other things to do. Sanosuke disappeared without a trace, leaving a slightly miffed Naruto. If you have other things to do, then why in the hell did you come see me? Forgetting Sanosuke, Naruto laid down and drifted off to sleep, dreaming of his date with Tenten and things to come later. Sanosuke knelt before Kami again and offered his thoughts on their date. Progress was acceptable, although Kami wished Naruto wasn't so dense. It certainly made things harder on the deity. I've never seen anyone who could be so innocent at such a subject. It's like he doesn't have a clue. What do you expect from one that has never known the love of another before? He doesn't know how to react to this level of intimacy. Wait until she wants a bit more from him, heh, he's gonna freak out. Yes, that will be humorous to watch. Or hear about rather, not that I would watch. Of course not, master. You would definitely never do that. The next morning came without fail and Naruto woke to the sound of something knocking against his window. He turned bleary-eyed to the sound and found a messenger bird. Picking the message off its foot, he shooed it away and opened the miniature scroll. Naruto, you have a mission. B rank. Be at the tower by 9 a.m. Tsunade. Groaning, he rolled over and threw his pillow over his head. He didn't want to get up, especially after having over a week off, but he couldn't deny a mission. It just wasn't in him. Throwing one last dirty look at the bird as it flew off, he stood to get dressed. At least maybe it would be a mission where he could try out his hammer and new dance. Naruto yawned as he made his way to the Hokage's office. He stretched his arms and cracked his neck, back and forth, trying to get all the kinks out. People walking by him winced when they heard the creak and groan of his bones and muscles pulling and popping, but he paid them no mind. His mind was elsewhere, still on the date with Tenten. It had been wonderful to spend an evening with someone who treated him like a regular person. She didn't hit him on the head once, didn't threaten him, and didn't expect him to go above and beyond just for her enjoyment. 10-10 just wanted him to be him. He couldn't wait for their next date. Who knows when that'll be though. Ninja's schedules aren't exactly ideal for relationships. Leaving his hammer outside this time to avoid a potentially hazardous run-in with Shizune, Naruto made his way to Tsunade's office. He waved hello to Shizune and walked through the door, closing it behind him with a sigh when he realized the Hokage was out cold and drooling on her desk. Why didn't the woman just put a cot in the room if she was never going to go home? It would be much more comfortable than that chair and desk. Steeling himself for whatever was about to happen, he slunk over beside her chair and gave her a gentle push. Ba-chan, you need to wake up. Come on, wake up. Wakey, wakey, hey you old bitch, wake up. Before her reflexes could kick in, Naruto sprung to the ceiling and stuck there with chakra. He was trying not to laugh his ass off as Tsunade looked in every direction but up to find the person who slighted her. That voice had sounded familiar, and if it was who she thought it was, he was still around. Naruto's luck wasn't what it used to be though, and the ceiling tile he had been clinging to broke and he landed in an unceremonious heap on top of her desk. Tsunade smirked and pinned him to the desk by his shoulders. Well, I go to sleep for 5 minutes and it's raining cute little blondes. Little bratty blondes, but cute nonetheless. Let me up, Ba-chan. Now why would I do that? I believe you fell into my lap, not the other way around. Besides, I always wanted a fox as a pet. Don't joke like that please. You know I hate being compared to that bastard. Tsunade huffed and let him up. The boy could take a joke about anything but his fox-like features. It wasn't her fault, they were what made him so unique. Glancing at the clock, she saw it read just a little after 8:30. Raising an angry eyebrow, she sneered at her younger subordinate. Didn't they teach you kids that ninja never show up early? You show up on time, at the exact time. I had another good 30 minutes before Sakura shows up to sleep and you ruined it. I'm sorry, but I wanted to talk to you. Oh? About what? Me and some choices I've made recently. Go on. I've made a conscious decision to stop pursuing Uchiha Sasuke. I won't put my life or the lives of my comrades in danger because of him. What brought this about? And how, exactly, are you talking without sounding like an idiot? It's a gift from Kami. I was never truly stupid, Ba-chan, just ignorant. There's a difference, you know. I can think more clearly now thanks to the gift. It's refreshing to be able to think clearly. Does it have anything to do with your eyes? I don't know. I was starting to think with a clearer head before the eyes, but when I received them it seemed to speed up the process. I don't know if they affected it or not. Is it a dujutsu? I don't think so. I'll have to ask Sanosuke next time I see him. Sanosuke? He's an angel. He gave me my gifts. Tsunade groaned and held her head in both of her hands. Why did this kid have to make everything so complicated? So let me get this straight. Okay, the first day you came in here, you had a war hammer from Kami. You were looking to find your soulmate too, if I remember correctly. How'd that go? Naruto blushed and stared at the ground. Well, I don't know. I've been training with 10-10 and we went on a date last night, but I don't know if that means anything. So you and 10-10 huh? One loves to cause trouble, the other loves pointy things. Loves trouble, pointy things. Any offspring of theirs, the thought is too disturbing. It was just one date. It doesn't mean anything. She asked me. She asked you huh? Doesn't seem like nothing to me, but hey, that's just me. Getting off your burgeoning romance with a weapons mistress and back to the prior topic, can I meet this Sanosuke? You can meet me if you want to. Two blonde heads immediately whipped to the side of the brown-haired man, who stood with his arms folded behind his back and a smile on his face. Tsunade couldn't help but think that he reminded her of someone. Naruto wasn't nearly as impressed with his entrance however. Sanosuke, how in the hell do you do that without letting anyone know you're there? I want to learn to shunshin without smoke. Don't pout Naruto. It's unbecoming an emissary of Kami, no matter how much she favors you. Tsunade, I see you are well. Hi, I am. And you are the infamous Sanosuke I presume? Indeed. Care to tell me what exactly is going on with my favorite blonde over here? Sanosuke grinned and took the seat beside Naruto. After situating himself, he focused his attention on Tsunade. Naruto is a very special boy. You knew this already, but he is favored by Kami and is her own shinobi. He is charged with catching a certain tainted soul and bringing it to my master. I can't think of a better person to give this responsibility to. But he has so much already to burden him. Isn't this another thing to the pile that he just doesn't need? Couldn't you have found someone who is a little more responsible? Sanosuke clapped his hand over Naruto's mouth before the boy could protest. He gave the Jinchuriki a steely gaze and turned back to Tsunade, who was astounded by the way he kept the boy in check. Naruto is chosen because he can handle the responsibility. There are few others in the world who could shoulder the burdens he carries and not break under the strain. He is my charge in this world, and although you view him as a soldier under your command, know that he is under mine as well. I will not supersede your orders, but he has other objectives. I have given him gifts to compensate for his earlier misgivings in life, and he shall receive a few more before too long as necessity dictates. What gifts have you given him? Well, the hammer is a given. It's a holy hammer and is uniquely Naruto's. No one else can use it. I'm also currently prodding him along the path to find his love in life, who I'm sure you've guessed by now. His eyes are the most intriguing thing though. Yes, they are. Are they a doujutsu by any chance? No, they are most certainly not. Now you are speaking like a Hokage and less like a concerned family member. I know how much Naruto means to you, Tsunade. Don't let your loyalty to this village cloud your judgment. You need every advantage you can get, yes, but you already have one. I agree. Naruto is a very good asset. Now then, his eyes? Ah yes, his eyes. When he visited Kami, Naruto retained a bit of the calm that Kami emits. It made his mind clearer and he was able to function better. Things he already knew, but had pushed aside, were made readily available to him. You know as well as I do the boy is an astute student as long as he's interested. Kami gave him the eyes because eyes are a portal to the soul, and as such, he can draw out his other gifts as the time comes when he will need them. How will I know what gifts I'll get though? It's already been ordained that you will receive the gifts as the time dictates, Naruto. I can't tell you any more except that you hold within you nothing but pure potential and a will to succeed. Those are some of the reasons Kami chose you. Now don't worry about your future gifts. You'll know when you get one. How? Your eyes will change more, just like your hammer. They'll evolve to a new state. It's just a matter of time. Tsunade had, by this time, broken out one of her bottles of sake and was partaking of it judiciously. It was to this scene that Sakura walked in. She took note of the blonde and brown hairdos sticking up over the chairs in front of the desk and her master's half-empty sake bottle. Frowning, she strode to the side of the desk. Shisho, what has Shizune told you about drinking in the morning? It's bad for your health. And what in the hell is Naruto doing here? And who are you? Sanosuke turned to Naruto and gave him a small smirk. I see now why you think she's so bitchy, Naruto. Not a pleasant lass in the morning in the least. Excuse me? I'd like to hear you repeat that. Tsunade had had enough. This morning was completely shot to hell. She'd lost some of her precious nap time. Found out that Naruto was telling the truth all along, and now she had to put up with a bitchy Sakura. A perfect morning indeed. Sakura, take a seat and shut up. I had things to discuss with Naruto and his friend, and no, I will not tell you. Sanosuke, I'd appreciate it if you'd visit me at a later time and we'll swap notes about our charge. Hi, I'd like that. I guess I'll be going now. Good seeing you again, Naruto. A light bulb seemed to come on in Tsunade's head all of a sudden. Sanosuke, before you go, are you the one responsible for this? Her hands swept to encompass Naruto's new look. She appreciated it more and more each time she saw it. Yup, that was me. Are you also responsible for getting rid of that thing? Yup, that was me too. I have some money owed to you then. We've been trying to get him out of that thing for years. Sanosuke just smiled and prepared himself to leave. No charge, Tsunade. Use the money to buy some good stuff for our next chat. Besides, it was a service to Kami to get rid of Naruto's former clothing. He disappeared without a trace, leaving a mumbling Naruto and an awestruck Tsunade and Sakura. Seriously, the jumpsuits weren't that bad. After Kakashi arrived 2 hours late, making Naruto seethe and stew, the meeting got underway. Tsunade had engaged in light conversation with Naruto, while Sakura kept to herself. It still astounded her sometimes, the familiarity with which her master and Naruto talked to each other. When the gray-haired Junin walked in, both blondes glared at him and Sakura let out a small amount of killing intent. Kakashi, let me get one thing straight. I want you on time from now on, or I will demote you. I've let you have your way for quite a while now and you haven't shown any sign of improving on your own. I'll start small at first. For every 10 minutes you're late, I rip a page out of your book. Understood? Kakashi could only nod his head dumbly. The third had never been so harsh. He'd rather be demoted to genin again than have someone tear his precious book apart. Tsunade took his silence as consent and carried on. As you all read, this is a B-rank mission. You are to infiltrate a small fort that the Sound have set up right inside our borders and either get information or destroy it outright. There are at least 3 Junin-level ninjas there, several Chunin, and some Genin. As always, do not assume that this information is accurate. Act with caution. Naruto? Yes? Try to use some of that newfound intelligence that Sanosuke was talking about. I'll try. Kakashi, you should all leave as soon as possible. Dismissed. The 3 made their way to the door and Naruto turned when he heard Tsunade call him. He noticed she had an odd glint in her eye and a smirk on her face. Take that hunk of metal with you and see how much damage you can cause. I hope that you 3 get to demolish the place. Naruto grinned and gave her a cheesy thumbs up. Don't worry, Ba-chan. Since when has there ever been a mission involving me where shit didn't go boom? Naruto didn't have to take long to get his pack and head to the assigned gate. He had snagged his hammer on the way out of the tower and was idly twirling it in the air like a baton while waiting for his 2 teammates. He sighed as he continued to twirl the hammer and got bored with that quickly. It was good dexterity training, but he tired of it due to a lack of interest. He didn't want to start a kata since there was no telling when his teammates would show up and he couldn't just stand there bored. Bad shit happened when he was bored. When Sakura and Kakashi showed up, they were greeted with quite a sight. Naruto was oblivious to them as he balanced his huge warhammer on his nose while humming a tune. He had garnered quite a crowd of children at this point who were astonished that he could do such a thing. Sakura frowned and shooed the children away, who glared at her for ruining their fun. She smirked at their antics and turned her attention to the blonde who was still ignoring her and Kakashi. Naruto, quit clowning around and let's go. We've got a long way to go. Naruto let the hammer fall into his hand and swung it to his back with ease. He looked at his teammates with boredom all over his face. Can we go now? I've been waiting here forever it seems. They took off with Kakashi in the lead, Sakura in the middle, and Naruto behind. They ran all day and made camp before dark. Sakura and Kakashi, finally having Naruto to themselves, decided to get a straight answer out of him. Naruto was just inside the glow of the fire, going through his katas slowly with his hammer. Kakashi decided to start things off. So Naruto, how did you actually get that hammer? Naruto never faltered in his stance while he answered their questions. I already told you. Kami gave it to me. What's up with your eyes? Kami changed them. Did Kami give you anything else? Boosted my intelligence. Sakura snorted and he stopped in mid-stance, frozen. Please don't scoff at me, Sakura. I don't belittle you, so don't belittle me. We're teammates, let's try to act like it. Why are you acting all high and mighty all of a sudden? Did that date with Ten go to your head? Trust me, Naruto, she's nothing to get excited over. The next thing Kakashi and Sakura knew, there was a flash of red between them and the tree behind them exploded into splinters. Sakura had a look of pure horror on her face and Kakashi's unseen mouth was open. Both shook with unbridled fear. Naruto stood still, his hammer no longer in his hands. He might have been stone still, but his eyes told a different story. Don't talk about Ten like that, Sakura. I won't have it. He stepped between the 2 shocked ninja and retrieved his hammer, before walking back across the small clearing and plopping down on the other side of the fire. They could see his eyes and they burned with righteous indignation. Listen to me, you two. I am Kami's own shinobi. I am here to find a tainted and evil soul and send them to divine judgment. I nearly died that day I fought Sasuke and I met Kami while I was out. I've had some weird shit happen to me in my life, but that took the cake. I have a huge hammer, sparkles in my eyes, and an angel for a friend. I've given up on Sasuke as a person and I don't believe that we should pursue him anymore. But Sasuke is an ass. He left us, Sakura. I've realized that now. I won't pursue him, but if we run into him, I will kill him. You can have him back when he's good and dead. So you're breaking your promise to me? No. The promise was I'd bring him back. Never said alive. Kakashi narrowed his eyes at his blonde student. That's cold, Naruto. Especially for you. I don't know who you think you've been talking to, But the Naruto I knew wasn't like this to his comrades. Like how? Truthful? The truth hurts Kakashi, but it doesn't hurt me. Sometimes I wonder why in the hell we were all put together on your team. We were a mismatched team, we had no preordained goal. We couldn't track, we couldn't infiltrate, we weren't frontline material, we couldn't strategize. What purpose was there for putting us three together, except for having Sasuke graduate? He wouldn't have meshed well with anyone else, so why not put him with his biggest fangirl and the one boy he hated above all others? That's not true. What's not? That he hated me? He stuck a Chidori through my chest. Not once, not twice, but multiple times. If that's not hate, I don't want to see what he does to people he hates. It would be horrible, I'm sure. Kakashi breathed deeply and turned to Sakura. What do you think, Sakura? About Naruto's new goals? I think they're a bunch of crap. This isn't the Naruto I know. Naruto narrowed his eyes and stood up. I'll take first watch. Don't worry about this new Naruto. After this mission, I'm going to ask Ba-chan for a transfer to another team. We obviously don't get along anymore. My views and yours don't mesh. Kakashi, I'm following your lead this last time, so don't fuck up. Hold on, Naruto, let's not be hasty. I don't want you to transfer and neither does Sakura. We care about you. Naruto rounded on the both of them, his blue eyes blazing. Oh, you care, huh? I was watching after that battle, you know. I saw everything. The two of you picked me up like so much common garbage, no words said, and trudged back to Konoha. You didn't check on my condition, you didn't do anything. Just drag the dumbass back until he's healed so we can make another pass at the Uchiha. Well, I'm sick of it. After this mission, I'm gone. And those Auto Nin better pray that you vote not to destroy that base. Why? Because I'll destroy them all. Anyone who follows Orochimaru is a bad person in my book. Besides, I need to test my hammer out in battle. Naruto crouched down in the tree line, waiting for his signal to begin. There were several more ninjas in that base than they had been initially told. All the better for him, it was one more thing he could deal with to iron the stress out. His thoughts went to 10-10 suddenly. He had left without leaving a note or saying goodbye. She was going to be pissed at him. Maybe Sanosuke had been kind enough to tell her for him. Nah, that angel had a sadistic streak. He probably wanted to watch Naruto get berated by the bun-haired beauty. A sudden crackle over his earpiece let him know it was his floor. Naruto was supposed to open up the dance floor and clear out some space. He obliged by rushing in and obliterating a wall with his hammer before crushing the Chunin guard beside him. Leaping over the now destroyed wall, he landed lightly in the courtyard with his hammer on his shoulder, looking at all the Auto Nin that surrounded him. He could hear the whispers about his hammer and they made him feel good. He'd get to test himself well here. The Auto Nins were wary of this boy who had jumped into their base. He was toting a hammer that weighed several times what he did and seemed to have no problem throwing it around. Deciding that he was very skilled, the Junin stepped forward to deal with the pest. The report had been misleading again. There were 7 Junin. Naruto's eyes narrowed. He hadn't expected that many. Hopefully, Kakashi and Sakura were taking care of the rest. Without another word, Naruto launched himself at the nearest Junin. It became a true dance for him after that as he began weaving in and out of the small throng, thrusting and swinging, pivoting and twirling. He had killed 2 Chunin off the bat with a well-placed swing and 1 Junin had been crushed under his hammer, his ribs broken, puncturing his lungs and heart. But soon the battle began to take its toll and Naruto had to take to hiding to catch his breath. It was while he sat behind a destroyed section of wall, that he heard them shouting around him, searching for him. It would only be a matter of time before they found him. He winced and stared at his right arm again. It had been hurting since he started the fight and it showed no signs of slowing down. It was a dull ache and he couldn't place what had made it start hurting. He didn't need any distractions right now and this wasn't helping. He needed to end this little fiasco quickly. Damn it! Where the hell were Sakura and Kakashi? He was answered when an explosion went off and half of the base was torn apart. Exploding tags were a shinobi's best friends for demolition. Thank God most of the forces had been wiped out in the blast. Now all he had to contend with was 1 Junin. Unfortunately, it seemed he was the best Junin out of the bunch. The Auto Junin was furious. He had been assigned to set up this base just inside Fire Country and was assured that there would be little resistance. Everything had gone wrong and now he had this blonde brat in front of him who had taken out his best men. The fact that he was swinging that hammer around like a rubber mallet was disturbing to say the least. It seemed the kid relied on the hammer, so the best way to beat him was to make him drop it. Yeah, that was the best course of action. The Junin leapt at Naruto, intent on taking his weapon away. Naruto watched the ninja come at him and fell into his stance, hammer behind, left leg and hand forward, ready for any attack. When the Junin went for a punch, is when Naruto began his deadly dance. He thrust his palm out at the other man's chest and the nin leapt back, only to be met with the force of Naruto's hammer, swinging by him. A smirk crossed the Junin's face until he felt flesh tear and looked down to see a shallow wound across his chest. He'd forgotten about the spike on the end. Wouldn't make that mistake again. Naruto kept weaving in and out of the man's guard, a thrust here, a swipe there, swing down with the hammer. He made a tactical mistake in going for a downward strike and the Junin took advantage immediately, kicking Naruto in the jaw and sending him flying. Naruto skidded along the ground before rolling backwards and righting himself. He wiped the blood off his cheek and glared at the Junin, who stood triumphantly atop his hammer. So boy, what now? You don't have your weapon, you're powerless. You Konoha nin are all the same. Take away your favorite toy and you're like a little child again. Lord Orochimaru was right in trying to destroy the leaf. Hearing the word Orochimaru made Naruto's blood boil. He crouched low to the ground and made the sign for Kage Bunshin. Immediately, 10 Narutos filled the area, the silver stars in their eyes shining. You'll find that I am far from useless without my weapon. I don't like your master and as far as I'm concerned, your vocal support of him has sealed your doom. Farewell, fool, I'll see your trip is quick, but certainly not painless. All the Narutos formed Rasengans and charged the Junin on all sides. He never knew what hit him and neither did the surrounding area. He left no signs of life. Kakashi and Sakura had watched the fight from afar for a while before setting off the tags. It was awe-inspiring to watch Naruto use that hammer against so many opponents and yet, he moved with a fluid grace that belied the unwieldy weapon. When he had began to finish his opponents off more quickly, they moved to blow the base up. The blonde was a good distraction with that hammer. They'd need to do everything they could to keep him on their team. They took to the high ground again and watched as Naruto decimated the Auto Junin. He was ruthless, efficient, and deadly. They had never seen him act like that before. 9 Narutos popped out of existence, leaving an exhausted blonde. He trudged toward his hammer and picked it up lethargically, before turning toward the direction his teammates were in. Kakashi, Sakura, hurry up and finish the job. Blow this place to hell. I'll be waiting for you just outside. He walked just a half-mile away and sat against a tree, gritting his teeth. The pain in his arm was back full force and didn't seem to want to go away. It had gone from a dull throb to a full-blown tearing pain, like his muscles were going to explode. He just bore the pain and waited for his team. A huge mushroom cloud and resounding explosion sounded the end of the auto base and within minutes he heard the footsteps of Sakura and Kakashi. He stood and swung his hammer to his shoulder and followed them without a word. Sakura and Kakashi kept glancing back at Naruto with worried looks on their faces. He seemed to be in pain and kept clutching his right arm, but they hadn't seen him injured in the fight. Hell, he hadn't gotten injured at all. Besides that one blow, the Auto Nins never touched him. They had made camp several miles away from where the base had been and Kakashi offered to take first watch. Naruto didn't say anything, but fell into a fitful sleep, oblivious to the worried looks on Kakashi's and Sakura's faces. In Naruto's dream he stood beside the fox at its full strength and he was dwarfed. It was massive and scary and he knew it would kill him in a heartbeat. But the Kyuubi didn't make a move to hurt him. It simply glared and snarled and gnashed its teeth, but it wouldn't attack. He couldn't, for the life of him, imagine why it just stood there. Thinking it was safe for the moment, he turned to glance around and heard a loud clink. His gaze drifted downward and that's when he noticed the chain around his ankle running to the Kyuubis. So this is what Kami must have meant when she said, fettered together. Indeed, brat. As unsettling as it is, we are chained together. I was nearly free of you, but you had to go and screw that up as well. I'd have been much happier in hell than living in your disgusting body. Well, excuse me for following the direction of the almighty Kami. This is your punishment after all for being evil. Every being has evil, boy. Even you. You just choose not to act on it. I am curious about your new attire though. If you loathe me so much, why carry my image with such pride? It's to remind me of what you are and what I am. And what, exactly, is that? I am the yang to your yin, just as you are the yin to my yang. We cancel each other out, but we both possess a small amount of each other in our souls. I know you were there, watching and listening, when I met Cammy. How couldn't you be listening? You're inside me. We are connected, against our will, by the will of another. I can't separate myself from you, so why not be proud of the fact that I am the container of the most powerful beast? You are proud that I reside in you? Naruto narrowed his eyes and smirked. I am proud that I have the strength to hold back the Kyuubi like a rat in a cage. What a weakling you have become. The Kyuubi bared its fangs and roared in anger. Foolish mortal. Rest assured that when we die, I will go to hell and I shall seek you out. I will taste your flesh in the next life. Cammy will not save you there. Silly fox. If you can't break our bond here, what makes you think you can defeat me there? My will powers the seal, my power itself feeds the seal. If you can't even defeat my body's natural defenses from the inside, what makes you think you can take me head on in a fight? Experience counts for a lot, mortal. True, I may not be able to battle you head on since your power is at least equal to mine, but I am old and wise, and I am crafty. Ingenuity counts for a lot in the midst of battle. Have you forgotten, Kyuubi? I am also a master of tactics in mid-battle. The playing field is more even than you think. When we fight, and it will be when and not if mortal, we will see who is the better. What are you doing? Proving to you that I can hold you with my power. The Kyuubi watched, amused, as Naruto began to yank strands of hair out of his head and began to weave them together into a rope. Once his task was finished, Naruto tied one end of the rope to the cuff around his ankle and one end to the ankle of Kyuubi. Looking up into the eyes of the Kyuubi, he smiled grimly. Now to prove that the seal is not the only thing holding you in. My power and belief in what is right are the seal. The squiggly lines are just a conductor. Grasping the links that connected the chain to the cuffs, he pulled and the links shattered, the chain clinking to the ground. The Kyuubi grinned maliciously and roared with laughter. Foolish child, you have broken the bonds that held us together. Now watch as I flee this pitiful prison. The Kyuubi made to leap out of the seal but came plummeting back down to earth beside Naruto. He stood and shook himself, glaring at the boy who stood with his arms crossed. What trickery is this? Your hairs can't possibly be stronger than a chain. My hairs alone, no. My hairs imbued with my resolve and my dedication to keep you jailed, yes. You're here to stay, Kyuubi. Now shut up before I put a muzzle on you. Kyuubi flung himself about in defiance, desperately trying to free himself of the golden rope, but found himself flung back into his cage and the seal positioned again over the crack in the door. Naruto smirked and sat back down in the filthy water, looking at the glowing blue chain visible on the floor below. Sakura and Kakashi hadn't slept a wink all night. They sat and watched as Naruto's face contorted into all manner of ghastly forms and sweat poured from him like a river. Sakura had ran a diagnostic jutsu over him and found absolutely nothing wrong. Whatever was happening to him was all in his mind. And who could fathom the mind of a Jinchuriki? Perhaps he was arguing with the fox again? Only when he awoke would they be able to tell. Kakashi hadn't opened his book since Naruto went to sleep. His eyes were riveted to the sleeping form of Naruto, but his mind was elsewhere. Where had he gone wrong with his blonde student? He hadn't been the best teacher, he'd admit to that, but they were his first team. Why wasn't he cut any slack? Besides being his first team, they were the most powerful ninja since the Sannin. And yet, history repeated itself. Sasuke became the next Orochimaru, a traitor of the highest caliber. Sakura became the next Tsunade, complete with temper and awesome medical skill. And Naruto became the next Jiraiya, an all-around ninja who could do nearly anything he set his mind to. The boy seemed to be invincible, bouncing back from things that would send normal people into insanity. He shook his head. Why hadn't he been a better teacher? Sakura's eyes were threatening to close, but every time she was on the verge of sleeping, Naruto did something to make her eyes snap back open. She kept thinking over and over about his declaration of quitting the team. Had she and Kakashi been so bad? Sure, they reprimanded him when he did something stupid, but other than that, what had they done? I mean, sure, she had hit him on occasion and Kakashi hadn't really taught them anything, but other than that they were a good team. Right? She sighed and brought her knees up to rest her chin on. Maybe things weren't as peachy as she made them out to be. She and Kakashi depended heavily on Naruto whether they wanted to admit it or not. She was shaken out of her thoughts when Naruto's body started to glow a blue hue. They watched as the blue glow began to center around his arms and shoulders, before a bright white light filled the clearing, and when they looked again, Naruto's arms were covered in chains that started with a cuff on his left wrist, wrapped around his arm, across his shoulders to the right arm, and flowed down to connect at the end of the handle of his hammer that lay beside him. There was no part of his arms that weren't covered with chain, and yet, it didn't seem to be uncomfortable to him. They continued to stare at him slack-jawed, when he woke and stretched while yawning. He cracked his neck and looked at his astonished teammates through bleary eyes. What? Sakura couldn't really think of anything to say, so she just pointed to his arms. He looked down and flexed his arms, waving them this way and that, listening to the clinking and clanking as the links banged together. Wondering if this was another one of his gifts, he turned sheepishly to his teammates and grinned. "Believe me now?" Two heads nodded in affirmative. The rest of the trip back home was spent in relative silence as Naruto tried out his mobility with the hammer and chain, while Sakura and Kakashi ran the trip's events through their minds. They had questions that demanded answers when they got back. Once they were checked in at the gate, Kakashi took off to report to Tsunade and try to plead with her not to listen to Naruto's demands. Sakura, however, was trying to convince Naruto to talk to her. He wasn't having it. "Come on Naruto, just talk to me. I want to know what's going on." "Damn it Sakura, I've already told you what's going on. Kami blesses me with powers when I'm ready. Last night was just another gift coming into play, although I could do without the dreams that accompany them." "What dreams? Tell me. I'm going to find 10-10. I'll see you if I see you." Naruto wandered around Konoha, trying to ignore the people that were staring at him even more intently than before. His life was going to be more interesting than ever. He definitely stood out with his outfit and hammer, but now with chains adorning his arms, clinking as he walked, he was quite an attraction. He could only hope Sanosuke would explain this gift, because he really didn't see a need for it. Deciding that his hunger was getting the better of him, he began to trek toward Ichiraku's until he heard a voice he was beginning to get very familiar with. Suddenly afraid, he turned his head and tried to make himself as inconspicuous as possible. He knew he should have told her he was leaving. Uzumaki Naruto. No denying it. 10-10 was pissed at him.
That's all for now. If you want to see next part, then please like this video and subscribe my channel. Thank you.